Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is JT with Legacy Arc Games, and we are back streaming more tabletop gaming. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is JT with Legacy Arc Games, and we are back streaming. And that's what happens when once again you forget to mute your own stream. I will never master that. As I was saying, we're back streaming more tabletop gaming for disabled and chronically ill gamers. I hope that some of you out there are at least enjoying the videos, if not seeing how accessible this hobby can be to those of you who may be homebound or otherwise physically limited and unable to attend an actual D&D group session. It's a lot of fun. It sure saves my sanity, and well, at the very least, I hope you're having fun with it. Seems to be doing pretty well. Now tonight, I'm pretty excited because we're back with GM Tangy and Tales from the Yawning Portal. We are, he tells me, going into a pretty big, eventful session. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to GM Tangy for the next 4 hours. Everybody have fun. Okay. GM Tangy, you with me?
Yes, I am.
All right, you are good to go. And I was just mentioning that I was pretty excited for tonight because you had told me that you were writing and working pretty hard, and you'd come up with a really cool session for us tonight.
I absolutely have. I've taken some of the parts here that were floating around and kind of disparate and put them into one uh, consolidated experience.
All
Um,
right, well, it is all yours.
all right, well, let's pick up where we left off last time with Kavan, Sheldon, and Dorian. Down here in the darkness of this dungeon, trying to figure out what lies ahead in the dark for them. Uh, Dorian is looks like you're pretty interested in the bounty he's able to collect here in the future. Um, while Sheldon, um, potentially very interested in this tree and what it spells for his potential reuniting with his religion and his old church. Um, on the way, we've picked up two, uh, let's say, people who are sympathetic to the cause. We've picked up here, it seems, a goblin who wishes for peace, who calls himself an apprentice, um, someone who's been working under the thumb of Belak. And his name is Cremak of Clan Derbaluk, which in Goblin stands for the Dominator tribe. Um, he has just shown you a way in without having to fight too many goblins, as you're currently surrounded by them. But he's shown you a way in through their basement here. Uh, maybe trying to help you get a direct route to Belak and potentially stop whatever kind of evil doing he is currently engaged in. Meanwhile, Meepo of Clan Thrubin, the kobold clan that has settled here up in the Sunless Citadel, kind of reclaiming their blood right as draconic members. Uh, he seems more interested in, well, maybe restoring a little bit of either balance to the Citadel here or to make his tribe uh, better. Um, and what that entails, we can discuss and find out as we play. But currently, Kremek uh, is debating whether he should venture deeper into the dungeon with you, as it is quite dangerous ahead. And I believe last time we dropped off, we had you rolling a persuasion check.
Yes, you left me on a cliffhanger with that one. I had convinced Meepo to stay behind, but Creamac was a little insistent. So
Um, I,
let's see how that goes.
yeah, go ahead and roll that persuasion. And as you do, Creamac is considering going or staying based off of what he's heard from you. Um, maybe thinking to himself, maybe having an internal monologue. Um, but you know, you see him kind of scratching his chin.
Any advantage, disadvantage, or just straight roll?
Let's make this a straight roll and then see where this goes.
Uh, Likely not good, because this is not my character's strength. Oh, could have been
Hey,
worse.
16's pretty good. You know, it might be difficult to persuade a goblin to, act in his own, against his own best interests. But I think in this case, Krimak sees the rationality behind your argument of staying behind to either live another day or to fight for what he believes in another day. So when he comes up to this door, uh, as he ushers you into this 20 by 20 room, um, he says, "Beyond this door, you may find people sympathetic to you, bugbears and other goblins. They, they also believe in peace."
Um, Sorry, GM. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember Creamac was. I could be wrong, but I seem to remember Creamac was leading us down a passage, and we had climbed down like a chute with vines on it, and there was
Correct.
fungus at the bottom. And that was where I tried to convince Creamac to go back.
That is one of the points you try to convince Krimek to go back. He needed you to see what was in this lab, essentially this grisly experiment Belak has been conducting on rats and, in the future, potentially goblins and humans. Um,
Alright, okay, so I got it backwards. This is after that. I apologize.
yes, you've made a previous attempt, and I think Krimak knew in his heart that he needed to show you that. But now I think you've maybe convinced him to stay back a little bit.
Kavan follows along, but before he opens the door, he inquires a bit skeptically of Kremak. Why should bugbears have any cause to be sympathetic toward me?
Krimak uh, replies, as you can see, he takes out a knife, um, and he begins to kind of cut away at a piece of wood in his hand. Um, he looks at you and he says, "The bugbears, they are enforcers. They do the hard jobs that no one wants. And ever since Belak has been here, plotting whatever he is, well, they've had to do the brunt of the work, take most of the risk. If you can convince them to lay down their arms or even join you, you might have an easier time confronting Belak."
And what of Belak himself? Kavan asks as he lifts a hand, just in an idle gesture. How far away from him are we?
You see Krimak put down the piece of wood and go to one of the other tables here. Um, all of the tables in this room are loaded up with um, varying degrees of weapons. varying degrees of qualities of weapons, I should say. There's a few scimitars, a few bolts and arrows, and you see him think a little bit more. Clearly, Kremak is a goblin who maybe thinks a little bit more than his other fellows. And as he pauses to consider, he puts down the tools he's using, and he says, "Please, I don't think I can do this myself."
You cannot do what yourself?
And you see him kind of become, well, nervous or anxious, and he kind of lays out his plan. He says, "In order for us to make peace, in order for us to find some solution between the kobolds and the goblins, we need to remove Belak. But in the meantime, we have to convince those who still work for him to lay down their arms, or maybe even join you. If not, I'm afraid you have a hard road ahead."
Kavan nods his head understandingly, and he inquires, well, none serve anyone without anything to gain. There are certainly ways into the Underdark from here, or paths up to the surface. What are they gaining in return for staying, or any of you for that matter?
Kremak finally puts down all of his tools and says, you see him just address you straight on, and actually even address the humans in the room. And he says, "I am afraid that Belak is using his powers here, using his development to create some kind of army. You see those twigs, you see the rats. Everything he's doing here is to create lifeless soldiers."
So, some form of undead, by putting the seeds within the corpses.
Kremak nods furiously, and he says, "Yes, yes. You may call it undead, but the power of the tree, it does something. It does something more."
Kavan takes a deep breath and exhales thoughtfully as he explains, I know of vampires, and the legends say that the tree sprouted from a vampire's blood. But I have never heard of a vampire's blood reanimating corpses. There's something about this union with the tree that makes it different. It's beyond my training.
Kremak nods his head and says, "Yes, yes. Like you described the undead, they change. Not quite living, not quite undead. Their skin turns green, pale green. It becomes hard and rough on the surface. When I saw the humans last, well, I've heard reports. They came down here regular, like you." And he points to Dorian and Sheldon. "Your skin, pink. But last reports I heard, they saw humans down here with green skin and vines covering their faces."
Like the tree, like a tree.
"Exactly," Kremek says.
And you say between living and dead. Did you, or have you heard, I suppose, whether or not they had fangs in place of their ordinary teeth?
Krimak shakes his head no. You see him kind of consider the possibility that these things might be vampires or a vampiric origin. But he declines. He says, "Nothing I know would suggest they're vampires. If they were, well, that would be something totally different."
Well, I'll see what I can do regarding the bugbears. I've managed, I believe, to strike something of a peace between yourselves and the kobolds, at least for the moment. But now we have the bugbears in the matter as well. Um, I don't know how many conflicts I can resolve. I'm no diplomat. Uh, but I will try. One thing I would ask you before we move on is many parts of this legend we've heard when we came down here involved a dragon in the city. Have you seen any such thing?
Krimak thinks for a moment and says, "Hmm, this must be the dragon they speak of, the Ashen One." And at that, Meepo speaks up and is able to kind of elaborate. And he says, "Oh yes, a short along." uh, you see Meepo kind of scratch his chin and think about it as well. He is no historian, but from what he can tell, he tries to explain to you. The Ashen One is what we worship. It look at our skin. It is red and scaly like his. And a long time ago, he made the whole continent bow before him. It is with his might and his majesty that we are who we are today. However, we live in the dark and make sure to worship him in case he returns. For if he does return, well, probably going to get a lot hotter."
Kavan just sort of lifts his hand almost to rub his brow, but he manages to stop himself and says, "You're worshipping a red dragon." He comments to these human companions, uh, living greed, I believe. Uh, so you haven't seen Chardalon in your lifetime? Many generations?
You see Meepo pipe up and say, "No, no, Sheldon is, long dead, I think. Uh, Something about a deal gone wrong? Well, he disappeared from this plane, and no one has ever seen him since. But there are rumors, and, well, our cleric, Eustrael, she says sometimes in the deep of night, she can hear Chardalon's roar. Maybe he is still out there, or maybe his soul is."
Hmm. Well, that's interesting. Interesting possibility. Well, both of you should stay here and stay safe. So long as the two of you are alive and working together, I believe there's hope for peace between your two tribes. If you were to come with us and fall, well, I fear for that peace. So I will do what I can with the bugbears and ideally make it to Belak thereafter. Settle this problem once and for all. If Chardalon is still here in some form, I will see what I can learn of that as well.
Um, Kremak and Meepo kind of look at each other a little bit hesitantly, and Kremak speaks up and says, "Yes, maybe we can work together and convince the other goblins here." that peace between us is a good thing. Come. And Krimek gets Meepo to get out of the room and try to, speak to the other goblins here. When you left this area, you saw goblins kind of working on Belak's tasks that he left out for them. As they leave the room, they seem to be discussing plans to get back the dragon, or at least maybe find Calcrix once again. Dorian and Sheldon are standing there kind of, listening intently, but also kind of inquisitive. They both have this puzzled look on their faces, and Dorian looks at you, and you see him directly address you, and he says, "Brokering peace between small folk. Did not think we would be doing that here." Meanwhile, Sheldon retorts to that, and he says, "Peace between any folk is a good thing. Know that even though their lives are tiny, their bodies small, they have their own wishes, their own lives to live and breathe."
Kavan offers a bit of a smile as he explains to Dorian, at times one must walk up a few steps in order to reach the next level. In this case, we needed to get past the kobolds, and to get past the kobolds, well, we had to help them make peace with the goblins. And in order to get beyond the goblins, well, it looks as though we may have to deal with bugbears. But each step we take up the stairs brings us closer and closer to this Belak. So at times we do have to do the unusual in order to achieve that which we seek. But before we go, Kavan says as he holds up a hand, looking around the room, there do seem to be some relatively fine weapons here, maybe some useful equipment for the journey ahead. It might be worth going through.
You survey the room and you see a couple scimitars, about 40 or so arrows. All of them seem to be relatively of adequate make. They're each obviously goblin made, usable, but maybe perhaps not the best you could find.
Right.
I believe you also see a table full of spears as well. So you see scimitars, spears, and about 40 arrows.
Well, Kavan, being the duelist that he is, will of course take a moment to look at the scimitars, but unless they should seem in any way unusual, he'll simply take them for goblin crafts work and probably leave them where they are.
You do so. You leave them there. This seems like a storeroom that might be important to the goblins if they choose to rebel. However, until for now, doesn't seem quite adequate for your purposes. You've already got equipment that is plenty good on you.
And Kavan nods after his inspection of the room, and he says to the other two, unless you found anything of use, I suppose we continue onward and find out what's ahead of us. Bugbears, apparently, at some point.
You see Dorian look at you with a smirk, and he says, "I'm ready." And he takes his light crossbow, loads a bolt into it, slaps it onto his back, making like a on his metal armor. And you see him pick up his sword and head into the next room.
Kavan does note, just in fairness to the two of them, I have managed to shield the lives of Meepo and Kremak by convincing them not to go forward into this darkness, whatever it may be. And I would offer both of you the same chance with no shame, and in fact with reward, such as it is. And as he states this, he reaches for his pouch and produces the signet ring he had hidden from him when he took it earlier. He says, I believe the goblins finished one of the group, but this is at least proof that you did come in search. You could collect the bounty.
Dorian looks at you and looks over to Sheldon and he says, You know, for once in my life, I'm not sure if the bounty is all that I care about.
Hmm.
Spending the time here makes me realize, well, it might be more beneficial for all of us if we continue. Um, and almost as if speaking for Sheldon, you see Sheldon kind of like his eyes light up, and he says, "Good friend, it seems we are on this journey together. And you, stranger, who we've known for but 1 or 2 days, it's been a pleasure here diving into dungeons with you. I have to say, it could have taken a lot more blood and a lot more sweat to get to where we are now. And for that, and I think for Eldaf's sake too, I am grateful."
Kavan seems rather humbled by the sentiments expressed by the two, and perhaps even a little awkward, being quite unaccustomed to this. He can be seen, however, to smile just a bit, and he says to the two of them quite simply, well then, that being your choice, let's be on our way. And he very quickly turns around for the door so that he doesn't have to stay in this awkward situation any longer. Um, he's just seemingly very uncomfortable with the the unfamiliarity of people caring that much for him.
Sure.
So he pushes the door open and onward into whatever lies beyond.
You push the door open, and it leads into looks like another room. Dorian is the first to step through, with his sword clutched in hand, and he sees this other door, and he kind of makes a look over to you, and he says, "You wouldn't mind opening that door, would you?" And then he takes out his crossbow, and he says to Sheldon, "It's getting mighty dark down here." And then Sheldon, you can see, casts a glowing spell onto one of the books that he has in his hand. And when he does, it kind of lights up the entire room.
No need to worry. Well, I suppose for the both of you it is an issue, but my sight ranges far into the dark. If I see anything coming, I will warn you. And as for the door, of course. And he pulls the scimitar in his offhand before he obliges and opens the door.
You go to open the door, and when you do, it opens up into a hallway with like soil on the edges of it. The other thing you notice, though, immediately is the about 6 foot tall bugbear standing there in the hallway, seemingly guarding it. And as soon as you see it, it turns around, hearing the commotion of you opening the door, and it yells at you and it says, "Who are you?"
Oh, pardon me, GM. I was just responding to a viewer saying they love the roleplay,
Oh,
so
nice.
it's being enjoyed. So, Kavan is a little startled as he opens the door, and well, he'd expected a bit of a journey, but instead there's a bugbear right next to the goblins. And He lowers his scimitar immediately, and he lifts his other hand in peace. And he says, "My name is Kavan. These are my companions, and we mean you no harm. We're here searching for, well, I will be honest with you, Belak. He seems to take as much as his short stature can, um, a very assertive posture, trying to conduct himself as a bugbear might respect.
Sure. You very respectively reply to the bugbear, um, and you immediately sense your teammates tense up. Dorian immediately kind of goes into this stance where he levels the crossbow on the ground before the bugbear, and he yells out, "I who? Oh shit!" And you can hear the bugbear kind of reply in a, "Hmm, you may seek Belak." And uh, as it turns around, not turns around, as it takes its arms from behind its back, it wields this about 7 foot tall um, sickle bladed scythe, uh, and levels it against you, pointing it at you. It says, "I guard these halls against intruders in Belak's domain. So tell me, what is your business with the outcast?"
My business, Kavan again firmly states, is to stop the outcast from what he is doing by whatever means necessary. I've seen what he's doing in the goblin's labs and the control he holds over the kobolds above. I know what he's doing, putting pieces of the tree inside of the dead to make them walk again. And I know, at least so the goblins tell me, that he works some sort of magics, um, possibly to keep you in his service as well. Uh, Either way, it does not matter to me. I am here to either stop him or to slay him.
The gardener, with its scythe, swings it around, not to intimidate, but this time to kind of set it on one hand as he spins it around. You actually realize it's not a he, and the gardener introduces herself. Um, when she does, uh, she replies to the bit that you mentioned about Belak. She says, "It is true. Belak, although we work for him, we end up paying the price. The dragon. Yes, you heard of the dragon. Cow Crix. Yes,
Calcrix? Calcrix? I've heard of a Chardalon, and we've also been looking for a small white-scaled dragon, but Calcrix is not a name familiar to me.
yes, it is the true name of the dragon stolen from the kobolds. We. And she pauses for a brief moment. You sense something there. Go ahead and give me an insight check. You sense the slightest tinge of pain, and you're not sure where it's coming from. You don't know if it's regret or, um, the loss of a loved one, but there's something there. As she speaks further, she says, "We lost one of ours trying to capture the kobold's dragon. She lays dead in the earth because Belak willed that we steal this dragon from the kobolds, usurp their idol, and remove them from this citadel. So now you come trying to stop him. What makes you think you can take him on? What makes you think you are a match?
And Kavan takes a step into the hall, noting as he does so, uh,
Sure,
I
you see the bugbear not move a 1 inch, holding her ground with one hand on her scythe.
sure, and Kavan lifts his hand, his free hand, stating, I mean no disrespect by entering your hall, and unless by your leave, I will not pass you. As to whether I believe I can stop Belak, I make no such assumption. He, uh, he just sort of turns his scimitar about, tucks it away, and says, I only make the assumption that I can try. And to try is a worthier thing than to simply allow all of you to continue suffering.
At these words, the gardener, um, you give the bugbear gardener some pause, and as she holds steady her scythe, uh, the only words out of her mouth are, "You are a creature from below. You know what it is like living in the dark all the time. I trust your judgment, although I do not believe entirely you know what you are dealing with.
And come
These
on.
halls are mine," she continues. "So let me take you to him." And without any kind of aggression towards you, she walks past you, opens a door, and signals you forward.
And Kavan makes a gesture toward his companions in the other room for them to follow as he goes along with the bugbear.
They slowly, uh, slower than you'd think, uh, but they're only human. They bring up the rear here, um, kind of giving you the same kind of uh, trepidatious looks, looks of concern and looks of worry that they've kind of been giving you this whole time. And as you follow the bugbear into the next hallway here, um, she kind of makes a stop before this door to the east, um, and not getting too close. Uh, and she kind of hangs her head, and this time you sense that you see that same tinge of pain as she gestures towards it. And she says, "Are you prepared to do and to sacrifice as much as your enemies?"
Why do you ask? What must I pass by way of equal sacrifice?
And she gestures to the room to the east, right here. And she says, "That is where she lies. Tologa, the huntress, as we called her. She lies among the buried, rot, and refuse we have collected. And around her grows a garden tended by the dead. You fight a man who was driven out from your above world, who lives now in the darkness, and he has made it his bed. He has made everything here his bed.
Come
He
on,
uses every bit that he can to create his army. Every last bit."
Kavan doesn't seem entirely surprised by what he's hearing as he explains to the kobold, we have seen two skeletons before, seemingly tending to an area much further back. We were told very specifically to not look at them, and we did not, and they let us be. What manner of creature then is the huntress?
And she says, she was the best of us. Someone who could track down and tame something as wild as a baby dragon. But it was not enough. And when she passed, having completed her task, we buried her here. We buried our greatest among the dead that still live. And she goes on and she says, if possible, I would like to retrieve her bones. She deserves more than just to be used to grow more blights.
Kavan looks back to his companions to check their readiness, and in particular, Sheldon, given the many mentions of undead, and then he nods again to the bugbear. I am fully understanding of your wish to see your huntress at rest. I will, in fact, put all of these undead servants to rest, and ideally we will find the remains among them. Do you know where it is that she put Caltrix after finding him?
The bugbear replies and she says, we managed to trap it in a trophy room, barricaded beyond 2 doors. It lays. Not even the goblins or kobolds will risk getting their faces frozen to find it. When we find Taloga's body, I will mark it for you. And she kind of takes out this crudely drawn map of the first floor, puts a red X on it, and puts it back in her small pack that she has on the side. And she says, in the meantime, may I ask for your assistance?
Of course, Kavan says, and he remarks, if you'd believe it, just a room or two away, there is a kobold dragon tamer who was the keeper of Caltrix before it was stolen away. And there is also a goblin, and they are working together to form a peace between their tribes, a peace that they would like to share with your people. We may well need your help to stop Belak, he explains further. But in order to do so, I believe all 3 tribes are going to be in need of a peace. You're going to need to be united against him in order to break his control.
The bugbear replies to you and nods, agreeing with you. You see her nod her head gently and say, this is true. This is true. And as she finishes nodding her head, she says, then will you help me? Help me find peace for those that have died under Belak's rule. And then I will join you. I will join you in this fight against him.
Kavan it seems to adopt an agreeable expression, and he explains, there's no need for you to stop guarding your hall. My friends and I are all quite well armed for this fight, but I would be more than willing to come back and retrieve you after we've laid low these undead, so that you might find the huntress's remains.
Um, the bugbear looks at you kind of puzzledly, similarly to maybe how others have judged you here. Go ahead and give me a persuasion check and see if she will accept taking a back seat to this. 10 is enough to make her consider it, give it a second thought. And you see her think about it for a moment. Then she shakes her head and says, "No, I will watch this endeavor through." And seeming to end a conversation there, she walks to the door here and she begins to count. She says, "Are you ready?" Dorian looks at you with his crossbow drawn. Sheldon has his warhammer now equipped, looking at you and says, "Well, what do you think?"
Well, Kavan draws his scimitars, this time both of them in hand, and explains it sounds as though, well, the gardeners, as they call them, are in number beyond this door, and, well, it seems to be the path forward and the path to finding Caltrix. I see no other option save to help her find the remains of her friend.
Um, when you look at the door, um, oh, I think I maybe misrepresented it to you. Calcrix is somewhere else on the first floor, so this is not where she is. Uh,
Oh, beyond as in to say, I don't have the map. Taking care of this is the only way to get further.
right, right, right. The mark on the map, I believe, would have been somewhere on the first floor. I'll go ahead and actually mark it for you, um, or I'll put a directional point to get there once you return to the first floor. But yeah, this is not where Calcrix is. This is simply where this looks like here. This door leads into some kind of. It's a wide door, so it leads into some kind of larger area. But as she goes to open it, she says, "Ready yourselves," and then kicks it open. Beyond, you see a room, kind of as I described, a room with plants, fungus, and piles of dirt freshly dug and sifted on top of what looks like to be these piles of refuse. You see all sorts of like tree bits, as well as even some bits of fur on top of these piles. But you're greeted to the sight of three skeletons and a twig blight. And at that, when the door is open, the skeletons animate, and you see them pick up their shovels and start heading to your way. Meanwhile, the twig blight in the center of the room raises an arm, a spindly arm, and begins to attack. Go ahead and roll initiative here. Oh yeah, this is not adding it to the tracker. That's my issue.
I was just replying to more comments in the stream. People are saying they're enjoying it, and they tempted to read ahead a little bit to find out what happens. But I told them don't bother. You've expanded it.
Oh yeah, this is a lot of this is it's there, right? So uh it exists in the module itself, but I am totally interpreting it a different way here.
So should I not use um the macro you mentioned earlier then?
So it is not working um as I'd like it, so I might go ahead and redo that here. But currently, I'm switching back to the one I usually use. So yeah, yours works. Let's see if mine works. There we go.
That was off of my sheet for the record. I didn't know what
Gotcha.
was up.
Gotcha. Well, I am going to go back to the one I always used. And we have, it looks like here, 8 participants here so far. With the skeleton, looks like on the north of the room, going first. The skeleton also is armed with a short bow. When it takes it out, it aims it directly at the person standing in the door. It is the bugbear gardener. Taking out its short bow, it shoots. The 9 hits the ground, kind of skidding across the ground, making this ting ting ting. And the skeleton raises its arms again to shoot another shot. But this time it is the bugbear's turn. Immediately flying into a bugbear rage, this gardener picks up its sickle-bladed glaive and immediately just dashes in, ready to attack. It slices the twig blight with its glaive, making a sweeping. And when it does, the twig blight immediately just gets cut in two. You see the bark on it just fly, just, and it is gone. And you can hear it making this as it triumphantly destroys this blight. A skeleton here behind it takes its shovel, raises it, and tries to smack the bugbear with it. 16 hits on the bugbear's hide armor, dealing 7 points of damage and immediately wounding your newly found companion. On Dorian's turn, he takes his crossbow, moves closer to the door, sees the skeleton in the room, and he is going to let loose a bolt. Dorian raises his crossbow, aims it. With a it hits the far wall, making like a tink sound. He misses, and this is when Sheldon charges in. Get them! You hear him say in his old man voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when he runs into the room, the glow of his book kind of washes the entire room in this bright white light, filling what is otherwise like a purplish dark interior to maximum brightness. When he swings, he swings with his warhammer. The 11 is not enough against the skeleton. With like a he swings his warhammer and hitting air as the skeleton makes this sound as it kind of just steps a step back, anticipating the hit. It is your turn.
Well, Kavan, as is true of his Gloomstalker training, immediately seems to get a bit faster as combat begins with the undead, and he is able, therefore, to move up very quickly alongside the bugbear. And at this point, he is going to attack the skeleton here nearest him. Drawing a blank. Remind me of targeting command here.
are you asking how to target, or are you asking?
Yeah, how to target the particular one I'm attacking.
Um, I don't think I don't think there's a mechanical way. You would just tell me which one you attack, so you could hold your mouse click on your target tended. Um, yeah, I would
Yeah,
know which
there
one
we
you're
go.
attacking then.
Okay.
Nice,
I do get an extra attack, but only for the first turn.
got it. And the 10 is going to, I think, miss against the skeleton. The skeleton has a shield raised, and when your scimitar comes down, it comes down right into it, kind of biting into the thick wood that the shield was made out of. The 18 does hit as you sweep your second scimitar, this time across the skeleton's body instead of directly at it. Um, 18 hits. Go ahead, roll damage.
But to be totally fair and honest, that should have been my non-magical scimitar. Is a 17 still fine?
A 17 still hits.
Okay. Uh, just getting the right one on there so I can roll damage.
You are good. That deals 7 points of damage to the skeleton, and when you do so, you knock out 3 or 4 ribs. They just go flying, scattering across the soil here. And it looks at you kind of like now with a not relaxed, but like a keeled over pose, as you're severing some of the magical bindings, keeping this skeleton intact.
And Kavan strikes away what he can of the skeleton as if shearing away at the necromantic construct, but he, of course, realizes blades are not exactly the ideal weapons against this opponent. And he remarks to the others, take care where you step. We know not how many more may be within this filth.
Um, you send out your word of caution, and it is heard. Dorian replies, "Aye, aye, I'll join you in a minute." Among the sound of blades hitting blades. If your turn is over, it is the skeleton's turn to act.
My turn is over.
The third skeleton takes out its short bow, centers its sight on, I think, Sheldon, as it is the closest one within a direct range. Shooting its short bow, it hits and makes purchase. This this arrow strikes Sheldon right in the shoulder, and as it clips him, you can hear him yell out, "Ugh!" And he takes 3 points of piercing damage. Back up to the initiative order here. The skeleton in the north that you just attacked will take out its shovel and swing it at you. This rusty shovel swings right over your head, hitting the air above where your face just was, making this sound. That is it for its turn, though, as the bugbear once again rages with a swings its glaive, this time at the skeleton behind it, and missing, kind of sweeping the ground where the skeleton's foot was, knocking over a few bones, but doing no kind of physical damage or lasting physical damage to the skeleton. The skeleton is still able to stand up straight. As it finishes, the skeleton that it just attacked will mobilize, this time swinging its shovel at Sheldon, making this hitting him, this time for 8 points of damage. And Sheldon has seen better days. The shovel connects, slicing the other part of his arm, where the other side of his body on his arm, this time making a gouge that starts to almost swell with red color. On his turn, Dorian senses, some danger in there. Takes out his longsword and charges in. 2, 3, 4. 5. 4 is probably fine. And he swings at the skeleton that just made a deadly gash on his companion with his longsword. That should actually be +3 on top of that. So with a 13, he manages to cut through the skeleton's scraps. This time connecting with bone and dealing 4 points of slashing damage to it. Again, not the best of weapons to use against the skeleton. But this time, I think he charges in knowing that this is a dire situation. He's going to action surge and attack one more time. With a second attack, he lands a hit, dealing 5 points of damage to the skeleton. This time, knocking part of its shoulder and collarbone straight away. The skeleton drops one of its arms, but still raises its shovel. Kind of creaked up and makes like this sound as it continues to keep fighting, but this time without help of 2 arms. Sheldon sees his companion come in, trying to deal some damage and turn the tide of this battle that has almost gotten deadly. The warhammer he swings this time, one-handed across the skeleton's now one-armed body, dealing 7 points of damage, which is multiplied against this skeleton's frail physique, dealing well enough to take the skeleton out in one hit. He smashes it across its face, its jaw, and upper skull or mid skull go flying, shattering across the ground here. And at that, you hear him say, "Eldest, guide my hand!" Taking out this skeleton to the south. Well, it is back up to you, Kavan. As you are turning the tide of this battle.
Is that skeleton to the far southeast of the room sniping at us?
Correct.
All right, then. Well, for the moment, rather than take out the skeleton near me, I am going to try and cast fog cloud centered on that skeleton.
All right. And what does fog cloud do?
1 second.
Looks like it says heavily obscures the area. Possibly making it harder for that skeleton to attack.
Right, I'm sort of gambling on the concept that it even needs eyes, but but it seems to be a way to at least stop Sheldon from getting sniped down.
A thin veil of fog appears for the skeleton. Soon it covers almost the entire room. And this is a thick layer of fog.
And let's see, I believe that would be my turn because that takes up a full action.
As you concentrate on the fog cloud, it grows and grows. The skeleton is completely engulfed, and so is the southeast side of the room. When it goes to act, you can kind of hear its deadened footsteps through the mist walk towards the party. And, well, now I have to find out if even I can see the skeleton and move it.
When your player breaks the GM.
Yeah, so I'm trying to maintain this fog cloud here as a visual, but I might have to move it here. I think the skeleton probably just takes another shot in the dark, and is probably still aiming it at Sheldon. When it does, it's going to have to make this at a disadvantage. Oh
Ooh.
wow,
Oh wow.
that is the that is the most unfortunate disadvantage roll I've seen so far. But that's D&D.
Yeah.
Through the deadened air and the solid, thick mist, kind of just completely walling off the southeast side of this room, you hear something, and it is not a good sound. It is a sound of a bow being shot again, and with it ratcheting up, it's like another hit, and another cry yells out. You can hear Sheldon being hit one more time through the thick mist, and you can hear him say, "Oh, God, gods!" As he refuses to utter the rest of that sentence. Um, the skeleton to the north of you, kind of clouded partially by this mist, walks simply out of it. This time focuses on you. Well, probably still focuses on you. This time it's Shovel swinging through the fog cloud of this room, and misses as it takes a good like bit of that cloud. It wisps in the air, leaving a trail behind, and misses you entirely. Going back up to the order, the bugbear charges in, attempting to shove whatever it runs into. Um, yeah, this is 1, 2, 3, 4.
This is not my brightest strategic decision, is what it is.
Oh wow. Well, diving into the mist, it makes a shove attack against what it finds. The skeleton is going to contest it. There you go. Duality of the dice. Um, in the fog cloud, you can hear this as the gardener rushes in, not even attempting to attack anything, but just attempting to shove down the arrows coming in from this direction. You hear this pile of bones kind of fall to the ground, making like bone jingling sounds. And when it does, you can hear the bugbear yell out in triumph. Dorian, this time, uh, takes his turn to attack the skeleton that's in vision, um, with his longsword attack. Again, this is +3 on top of his +2. A 16 hits. Two-handed longsword deals 10 points of slashing damage to this skeleton, essentially taking its head clean off. He spins around, careful not to hit you, plants his foot in the ground, and slides his sword right through the lower part of this skeleton's skull, um, and takes it out. The skull falls on the ground and falls into the mist cloud, um, taking and trailing a bit of air with it. After Dorian's turn, it is Sheldon's turn, and he is going to take this turn to leave the room. And you can hear him say, "I'm badly wounded," and as he leaves the room, it is your turn, Kavan.
Does Kavan see anything within the fog cloud, assuming his vision allows that?
Um,
I personally cannot. It may be due to uh, roll 20, I don't know.
because the source of light left this area, and on top of that, the heavily obscured area, almost like darkness, um, uh, encompassing the southeast corner of this room. You essentially have like halved or quadrupled have twice vision. So it might be difficult to see what's going on in there. And I'm actually reading the heavily obscured rules here. I think I think this is almost an effective darkness spell. Um, yeah, it seems creatures here are suffering from the blinded condition. You may choose to end your spell if you'd like, as it is a concentration spell. But everything inside of this fog cloud is blinded.
At this point, with two of the skeletons out of the room and Sheldon having safely left, he will cease his concentration upon the spell, and hopefully, with his ability to see restored, he will know where to go. Until the fog clears, he's hesitant to do so for fear of hitting the gardener.
The when you stop concentrating on a spell, the fog cloud immediately dissipates. Like magic, the cloud dissipates as quickly as it was summoned, and you see you see the bugbear lying on top of the skeleton who's been knocked down to its knees, not to its knees, to onto the ground. It is prone.
Well,
Go ahead and mark that.
in that case, I will advance, and as Kavan reaches the bugbear, he is well. A bugbear wrestling a skeleton is a bit difficult to navigate around, but
They're
never.
not quite wrestling. She's essentially knocked the skeleton onto the ground prone. So your attacks would have advantage on it.
Okay. In that case, he simply advances, still moving at unusually swift speed, even for him. And with his scimitars turned so that the points are facing the floor, he simply stabs them down, aiming for the skeleton's head.
Sure. From the skeleton's point of view, this fog cloud that has just completely obscured its vision, blinded it, uh, was still there, but for a split second, it dissipates. It's on the ground now, completely different than how it started its last turn. But go ahead and give me a roll as it watches as you plunge your dual scimitars into its bony body. 17 and a 13 both hit. Go ahead and roll damage. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah, describe to me how you take out this skeleton.
Well, with the skeleton laid out prone by the gardener, who is actually quite formidable, uh, he brings the scimitars up and then very swiftly drives the points down toward the floor. And as he does so, his blades crunch their way through the skeleton's brittle skull until finally they hit the stone beneath. And as he draws them apart, he waits for a moment to see if it continues to move or if it ceases to be animate. And he asks the bugbear, "Are there any more than these three?"
You do so, and the skeleton, with the coup de grace, the skeleton's reddish eyes, with their beads in the center, um, kind of dissipate, making this like, tss, and you can hear the skeleton go. The skeleton succumbs, um, and you are out of combat. As you take out your scimitars from the dirt, put them back into their sheaths, with a quick flick of the wrist, the bugbear looks to you and shakes her head. Uh, her next actions are to start digging the ground. She picks up one of the shovels the skeleton's left and begins crunching into the dirt. It's like and in short order, about a minute or two, she uncovers the grave of her fallen companion. As she picks up Taluga's bones, she wraps them up in a leather sack and kind of slings it over her shoulder. And she looks at you and says, "Thank you, Dark Elf. You've made this terrible endeavor easier."
Kavan is quick to shake his head, silver hair a bit tousled and swaying alongside his face. He says, quite to the contrary, it was your might that took down the sniper. I was merely the one to strike the killing blow, so to speak, for undead. Have you found all that you sought of your friend?
The bugbear nods her head, and she extends out an arm. Thank you. She introduces herself, um, and she says, "I am fine. From now, we can use names. The name is Broma."
Broma, Kavan echoes as he accepts the gesture of the forearm, clasping it briefly, and
You
then
clasp hands with this mighty uh, bugbear, and you can just like see these mitts like hit each other, and they make this like sound, just you know, right on each other.
Kavan being a little 5'6" dark elf, his hand probably disappears for a moment.
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. The strength and flexibility of a bugbear is it's nothing to sneeze at. These are uh, these are terrible foes if you would meet them on battle.
Kavan attempts to remain still and standing with the cobalt, or rather with the bugbear's very mighty greeting. And then he indicates with a nod of his head his companions. Sheldon, he says, first indicating the warrior, and also Dorian. And as he names Dorian, he realizes that Dorian had actually fled in the middle of combat. And at that point, he is quick to run for the hall or to the
Sure,
entrance to check
sure.
on him.
You do so. You head towards the entrance, and Sheldon. I think you were talking about Sheldon. Sheldon comes in,
Oh, he
kind of
was, yes.
clutching his sides, uh, and as you can see, he's already bandaged it up with a quick medicine um, kit, and he looks okay. He is stable. However, he looks like he could use a rest or two. As he stumbles into the room, he says, "Hey, damn skeletons got me. Ah, got me good. You wouldn't mind taking a breather." Ugh.
Come on is very quick to disapprovingly shake his head as he, without hesitation, puts a gloved hand upon the bandaged area as if to test it. He says, "We can take a rest, but I'm not going to leave you in this state while we do so." And he casts Cure Wounds upon Sheldon. And as he does so, he'll expend a second level spell slot to make it a little bit more powerful.
Gotcha. I think I think you are able to cast at least a first level spell. I don't know if at level 3 you have access to second level spell slots though.
I
That is
sub.
just a yeah.
Uh,
That's I think that's true. I can check it though.
I suppose it would depend on your interpretation because I think I have access to darkness by way of being a drow, and that for
Hmm.
me is a second level spell, but technically
Correct.
I do not.
Right. I think that is access to darkness might be uh a Gloomstalker feat. So you might get that as you level up. Um,
I think it's
is that
drow
because of a drow?
magic. Yeah, I
Oh,
think
it is drow magic. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so in that case, that's usually yeah. I usually call that as like a racial or a innate spell casting. Um, and that is uh one a day. So you have a one a day darkness or a one a day fairy fire. However, you don't have a second level spell slot. Like you couldn't replace it with that. So
Okay. even so, he doesn't want to take any chances, having seen how bad the wounds he suffered were, so he'll still cast Cure Wounds on him as best he can.
Sure. It's a level 1 spell. I believe that is 1d8 plus your modifier.
Yes, which is 3.
Nice. Sheldon heals for 10 HP as suddenly his demeanor changes, and he watches as kind of the blood in his wounds completely soak up dry. The bandages almost fall off from how dry they've become. And you can see that the redness spreading throughout some of his clothes has stopped. He looks to you and he says, "Oh, oh, oh, well, thank you, my friend. Oh,
Kavan lifts his hand only as the subtle energy emanating from his palm seems to fade away, and the thanks are met with a simple inclination of his head. I could hardly let you rest upon the floor when you had taken so many hits in the battle, and may I say, you faced them with bravery. And he's very careful to note that with emphasis, as if in respect. And of course, to himself, he's thinking he deserves the praise and he deserves the assurance that, uh, despite his doubts and his faith, he still fought the undead as a cleric would. And then he looks to I'm sorry, Broma, was it?
correct.
Yes, he looks to Broma and he asks her, "Is this room a burial ground, or is it merely another garden for the skeletons to tend?"
Um, uh, First off, I think Sheldon will reply to what you said, and he'll say, "Yes, these undead are an enemy of my goddess as much as you and yours. We must defeat them, and we must face them in the light." Um, as he finishes recovering, the bugbear replies to you and says, "This is both to Belak. The dead aid the living aid the dead, and anything in between is shared among everything else in the dirt."
Kavan nods understandingly and comments, "I wish to look about to see if any of the remains might have anything of help to us in the coming battles. As, to be quite honest, we cannot afford to sacrifice any advantage, but I did not wish to violate sacred ground." And he takes a step forward as he explains this to look about at the dirt, see if anything perhaps stands out, and the skeletons as well.
Yeah, sure. You start digging around and conversing with the bugbear as you do so. The bugbear says, you can see she shakes her head and says, "No, there is no such thing as sacred ground, except for the ground beneath the tree. Not to Belak."
Well, not to Belak, Kavan replies, but it's not Belak I respect. It's your people. If you were to have sacred ground in this room, then surely I would not touch the earth.
Broma shakes her head again and says, "No, we bugbears rarely practice any formal religions or beliefs, if that is what you're asking. I will find my own place. I will take her remains to be buried in a place secret from those outside of our tribe. You may spend time here, and when you are finished, I will be to the north." and she begins to walk out.
Kavan allows Broma to go without interruption so as to give proper rest to her friend. And, well, at this point, he's quite shamelessly looking around through the dirt and through the remains of the skeletons. This is not the most dignified of things to do, he explains to the other two, but as you've seen, these guardians are apparently far fiercer than they appear. Things may only get worse as we grow closer to the tree.
Dorian and Sheldon both agree with you, muttering some combination of, "Yeah, I hate undead," and "Oh, they are wise and furious. I've never encountered such a dangerous mockery of life." Um, when you start looking around, you find a body that looks like to have been half looted. Uh, its shirt and pockets have been ripped and torn. Um, however, on one of its vest pockets, you dig in and you find a ring, um, silver with, I believe, a small gem encrusted on the top. Um, a garnet, I believe. Actually, not a garnet because the garnets are the that is more of the Kukerly family here. I think you find something with topaz in it, and on the inside of it, you can actually read a name written in Elven.
And Kavan will turn it about, of course, to read whatever is engraved on the inside of the ring.
On the inside of the ring, it says in Elven, "To my love, Caracas," and Caracas is a name.
Caracas, Kavan echoes as he reads the word, and he asks the other two, think back to the bounty board. Was the name Caracas among the missing? And as he asks this, he fetches the signet ring from earlier from the goblins, and he looks at them both to see if they compare in any way.
They don't. They're mostly different from make and quality. The garnet ring is a significantly better make, but only by maybe 5 or 10 gold pieces. Um, the ring that you're currently holding seems to be one fashioned quite quite with the skill of an elf with not much to work with. The silver is already kind of tarnished, and the gem itself, um, although finely crafted to shine brilliance in its many facets, is quite tiny.
Kaban seems almost reluctant to take the ring, having read what the inscription says, but at the same time, well, the corpse has been left here quite indignantly to be perhaps transformed into undead at some future point. So, in the end, he opts to keep the ring. Uh, he puts at first the signet ring away, and then he walks over to Sheldon, inquiring of him, perhaps you could tell me something of this while we rest. I should wish us all to rest and recuperate, but this is an elven ring, I believe. The script suggests perhaps engagement ring or wedding ring, but it's all I've found in the dirt.
Um, Sheldon looks it over. He comes to the same conclusion as you. As you can see him like inspecting the ring, bringing it close to his eye, and he says, "Ah, yes, I agree as much to those circumstances. Hmm, Caracas." And he thinks back to the bounty board, and he says, "I believe believe this might have belonged to one of the people gone missing. If that is the case, there might be a bounty for them, or at least their belongings, and no knowledge of their fate. I say we hold on to it. In the meantime, if you'd like, I can look it over, maybe divine something. Something as to the fate of the wearer of this ring.
Of course, if there's any chance that we can return this ring to its proper owner, then we should, of course, do so. Kavan concurs. And while we rest, assuming it would not deplete you at all, please do learn what you can from the Lady Eldoth. And we will perhaps rest in the hall rather than in this room.
He agrees with you and he steps out. As he kind of looks over the ring, this is this is your chance to take a short rest here as he spends some time to inspect the ring. You actually see that the door to the northern hall has been slightly ajar, and it seems like there is activity, maybe involving a shovel to the north. With this short rest, I think Sheldon is going to take one hit dice. Yep, and go back up to full health. And I think as Dorian contemplates his surroundings, takes out a whetstone and begins sharpening his blade. Sheldon perhaps takes his time to do something more thoughtful. He is going to excuse me. Sheldon is going to take his time and try to channel divinity in an attempt to figure out what is going on with this ring. You are welcome to take a short rest here as well.
Oh, I apologize. Kavan settles down upon the ground as well. There's really no cleanliness here, but in the neatest area that he can find. And as he sinks down, he seems to drift into what the other two are now likely familiar with to be as much of a trance as he can accomplish under the circumstances. He had expelled a fair bit of his magical ability during the last battle, and well, if he can manage to retrieve any of it, he attempts to do so in this rare opportunity to um, take a moment within his own thoughts.
Um, sure. I believe a long rest is required to get back your spell slots, so you might not get all of those back. But I think something you've done earlier might help with this check here that Sheldon is attempting to make here. Um, as you sit down to meditate briefly, um, you ponder the situation you're in, and as you go through the corridors of your mind, thinking about all the things that have popped up, crept up on you, the Caracas name calls to you, uh, and you begin to see visions. Uh, Visions that maybe your mind wouldn't take you, not necessarily by its own. Um, and you're shown the vision of these dark, hunched over figures seeming to struggle with standing up on two legs. As their form changes and grows, their dark shapes turn from humanoid to almost bestial, and you can hear the sounds of animals of the wild in your ear. As your meditation almost wraps up, something comes to you, a sound, and it is the howl of a wolf. And as you are roused from your meditation. Sheldon looks at you and says, I've found something. Something that might be of interest to you. And in his hand is the ring.
Kavan, as he drifts out of his meditation, can be heard speaking, uh, well, either to himself or to the air, and he asks, Lady Selune, are these your own, or are they malevolent? Recalling, of course, that his goddess is, among other things, patron of good lycanthropes, and he seems to have, by his judgment, just seen perhaps werewolves. And he looked to Sheldon in the ring, coming back to the here and now, and uh, inquires, "What is it that you found?"
Sheldon shows you the ring and he says, I've discovered something. Normally, I use my divine speech to heal myself. Thank you for doing so. In that stead, I've managed to divine something from this ring. You see, I worship Eldath, and in all my endeavors, I seek to preserve life everywhere it may exist. In this ring is a life, or at least a bond between souls, which, in Eldath's vision, is as good as any life. And as he turns the ring to on its side, he uh, puts his holy symbol to it with his palm opened. He channels some magic with prayer, and he says, "Elders, show me your light." And then the inside of the ring changes. The runes written in Elven morph into a different set of words. The words "to my love, Caracas" change to a different set of words that read, "May you always stay true." Um, and this is obvious to you that this is likely some reference to the wearer's um, well, potential form. Uh, Indeed, I think you are justified, I think, in thinking that this might be a ring worn by a lycanthrope.
Oh, Kavan. Oh, I'm
As the
sorry.
ring
Go ahead.
glows and fades, Sheldon gives the ring back to you and says, Perhaps you are meant to find this ring. The fate of its user I do not know. We may find out as we confront Belak. We may find out why lycanthropes are among those here, this up far north, or why he has taken all kinds.
Kavan accepts the ring with a nod and seems no more informed in his expression than Sheldon. Uh, I do not know that it is destiny for me to have found this ring, he offers, but someone seems to have cared for him very much. And my lady does indeed watch over lycanthropes of good intent. Uh, perhaps, perhaps he merely wandered too far north, and Belak's servants took an interest. I could not say, but I will keep it safe. And perhaps when we return to the village, there will be someone there to claim it and to have peace in the doing. And as he says this, he takes off one of his gloves for a moment and puts the ring on before pulling his glove back on over it.
Sure. As you do so, something changes in your vision, or rather, smell. As you put on this ring, you suddenly realize you can smell a whole lot more than you could before. And as the ring sort of um, suffuses its magic through your blood, you find you're able to have a +2 to perception checks involving scent and smells. It's finally attuned your smelling senses as you wear this ring.
Kavan immediately, of course, has the unpleasant experience of keenly smelling the rotting dead. And this, of course, makes him aware in turn that the ring is likely enchanted. And he indicates this to Sheldon as he explains um, there's more to this than it appears. I can smell things that I could not smell before. It is as if when my training made my sight in the darkness more keen, but merely wearing the ring has done the same for my sense of smell. And he pauses for a moment at this and then pushes up from his meditative pose, noting, regardless, valuable though it may be in my trade, if its true owner is in the village, I will not keep it even for its power. For the moment, we should rejoin our gardener friend.
Um, Dorian and Sheldon both agree, ready to go after a short rest. As they move closer to the door to the north, they kind of slow down, as if giving the individual in that room some space. As you approach the door, you can hear Broma say, "Approach! I am finished with my business here."
And Kavan takes one slow step into the room at first, just to ensure he's not interrupting anything at all sacred. And then he takes another step and asks Broma, what is this place? Is this where you have laid your friend to rest?
Broma replies to you, and she says, you can see her shake her head. "No, this is simply one of the places. They belong in many. So here I have laid part of her. This is where we would." And Broma thinks, you see that same kind of pain of loss. And she says, "This is where we would gather to continue our traditions of the Bugbear tribe. Us, who are this north with so few of us. I hesitate to think what would happen to our traditions if I were the only one left." Um, and she picks up her supplies. She says, "We must go forth. Belak still roams, and we must put an end to his evil treachery."
Kavan listens attentively to the explanation of the funerary rites and Broma's interest in continuing her people's ways. And he explains, I cannot claim the privilege of being able to honor the ways of my own ancestors. They're quite different from my own nature. It's the very reason that I was driven from my home, he explains. Uh, I respect that you wish to preserve your own, and I'm pleased that in some small way I may have been able to help you in that. And having shared his honest feelings on the matter, he inquires, what of your people? Do you not wish to stay behind and guard them while we head forward?
Um, Broma nods at your comment, and she says, "Indeed, it is difficult for us, but there is only one way in and out of the grove, and it is before we get there. It will be much darker. We may see things. The citadel in the past was used to worship a dragon who itself was of the utmost evil. I would not be surprised if some of that has soaked into the foundation and corrupted Belak and his cronies."
And Kavan repeats the name Ashardalon.
Yes.
Yes, and he doesn't seem particularly surprised to hear this, but he nods in understanding. Um, so, other than the white dragon, you see no others here.
Um, the look on Broma's face, you see that she's thinking about it kind of intently. Um, no draconic blood here except the kobolds. And there are creations that Belak has summoned. We have left them in their rooms. If you wish to remove them, you may. But I say we leave them where they are. Belak is the one we are concerned with, not not of the spawn he has summoned from the plane of fire.
And Kavan tilts his head at this and confesses, matters of the plains are indeed beyond me, much less so than Belak for once, but you say he summoned them and put them in rooms. Are these rooms among your people's domain?
The bugbear points to the south and says, "There are other gardens like this one, where we have left fire snakes, or salamanders as you may call them. They skitter and live in filth. We leave them there, hoping that Belak does not call for them. But yes, we are their guards, and they are our charge."
Kavan seems almost confused by this point. He explains, I do not understand why creatures of fire from the plane of fire would wish to dwell in filth any more than the skeletons. It would seem to me as though they would be indifferent to such things. It's very strange magic this Belak works, and as he says this, he seems quite troubled. Within his own thoughts, he had suspected that perhaps Belak was a fallen druid, for example, but the more he hears, the more he realizes the things he's doing don't make sense to him. The things he's managing to accomplish with his spellcraft, and thinks, well, perhaps the tree is more in power than its keeper. And
Brahma, you see her nod her head and say, "Yes, yes, but maybe." And she pauses to consider the implications. Maybe he is that paranoid that he summons these beings of fire in order to burn anyone who would betray him and his tree. Maybe, maybe if he cannot be the true tender of this grove, he wishes it be burned to the ground.
it may be this, Kavan admits, or, and he pauses for a moment, uh, given where he's placed them, perhaps they are intended for your people in the event that you should defy him, much as the skeletons in areas prior to these were placed among the goblins. Are you certain you wish us to leave them?
Um, you see Brahma kind of bristle a little bit as if the threat of a fire snake would cause her fear. And you see her shake her head as if shaking off the notion that you've brought here, where that she could not take these fire snakes on herself. But she says, "Hmm, a wise assumption. However, if we take these fire snakes on, we may have less energy to take on Belak. I say we go to the source and cut it off at its root."
Kavan, for once, nods quite decisively. I agree, he says. These beings, you say, he summoned them, they're conjurations. Therefore, if it works as other magic does, then slay the conjurer and the summoned should be returned to their homes.
Brahma does not know much about magic, and she kind of shrugs and says, "Yes, if that is how magic works, then maybe I am even wiser than I have assumed."
Well, Broma, if nothing else, well, you are indeed wise, but I should say you are stronger twice over. And, well, I cannot ask you to leave your people in time of danger, but if you are insistent, I would feel less fearful asking you to join us than I did, or rather than I was, the kobold and the goblin.
Um, Brahma nods. You see her. She says, "Yes, yes, yes. Tiny people in their tiny lives. They will make a living by avoiding death and those who wish to crush them under their heel. But me, I do not fit easily under boots, nor do many of my people." Uh, she begins the journey to the southwest here,
Come on.
opening
Oh,
this door.
come on follows along as he comments with a bit of dry humor. I'm fairly certain, Broma, that I fit beneath your boot. And he, he sort of peers around her to see where it is that she's leading them.
Broma is leading the party here to a hallway to the southwest of this room. This room looks like, uh, well, I think I described it earlier, but to describe it again, this room that you're currently in is a similar garden with a lot of purple fungus kind of lighting up the area. It's actually quite bright and tinkling. Like the lights seem to be kind of like pulsating in this room more so than others. Um, As she leads you down to this hallway, though, the darkness kind of envelops the area. Uh, None of the light from this room, from the phosphorescent fungus, is really making its way in. And you see Broma kind of change her pace to almost a crawl as she makes her way into this room. You can hear her say, "Come, come, we have much further to journey." Um, I think you mentioned the light, you mentioned brightness and light, and at that Sheldon kind of recasts light on one of his books. Um, Broma hears your question and says, "No. If anything, the brightness will intimidate them. Maybe." And you can. Oh, you're good. I'll move you there. Yeah, that's one of those awkward squares where it won't let you do that. Um, you walk into this room expecting um, some kind of resistance. And as Sheldon and Dorian make their way into the room too, they kind of stop to ogle the sight they see. Broma walks in with the scythe raised, ready to cut down any interlopers. And instead, what you see is a room with a dragon statue in the center of it. It seems that this is one of the rooms that the dragon cult used to worship a Shardalon. This could be the very visage of that dragon of ancient lore. Granite blocks line this chamber's walls and ceiling, though many are crumbled and broken. You see stony debris littered across the floor, and in the center, a huge marble statue of a rearing red dragon stands in the curve of the western wall. The eye sockets of the dragon are empty, but a red glow lingers there, providing an eerie reddish light throughout the chamber. The radiance casts an inky shadow behind the statue's wide fangs, and a square tile of dark stone is set in the floor in front of the dragon statue. Meanwhile, you see runes are carved around the edge of the stone square. Sheldon looks. Sheldon looks, and I don't think Broma really has anything to say here. Broma probably looks at the statue and says, "Hmm, I'm sure he was terrifying in life as he is in marble." and kind of inspects the statue a little bit further. Dorian walks in and says, "Oi, hey, look at that square. I reckon there's some trap or booby trap or maybe even treasure there. What do you say to activating it? Now, let's see." As he goes up to investigate the runes there, you can hear Sheldon in the back caution him and say, "I wouldn't be too bold, not in these quarters. Be careful." As he swings across the other side to look behind the dragon statue, he spots something, and he says, "What's this?" Sheldon has discovered some loose stone in the wall, um, and looks like Dorian has discovered some runes. Sheldon points to it and he says, "Ah, a loose stone in the wall. Perhaps there is a small alcove beyond this, or some kind of hidden stash." Meanwhile, Dorian says, "Alrighty, hey, you got your stash. I got my little puzzle here. Let's see, what does this say? Anyone here read Draconic?" And he says, "Shoot." Um, and he kind of pushes his hands on the runes as if trying to glean knowledge from them simply by touch. There is indeed a loose stone that you also see, Kavan, at the back of this western portion of this room. It seems to be about eye level, and looks like it could be removed to. Yeah, it looks more like a loose brick than anything. You go and make your way for the brick, and you flip it. It kind of turns and falls out of its hole. And inside, you see a small stash of a pouch and two flasks. Um, Sheldon looks at them and I believe simply makes a medicine check. And is quite confident in looking these over as he uncorks the lid, gives it a sniff, and he sniffs the sharp scent of sulfur, as do you. And he says, "Oh, yes, it's quite clear these are alchemists' fires, perhaps used in a ritual to worship a Sheldon." Um, Sheldon agrees, nods his head, and says, "Yes, I will take one of these. Do not have much fire on my person, anyways." Dorian tries his best, but he does not speak or write or read Draconic. Trying to glean as much information as he can by touching the runes, he is able to glean that they are indeed in Draconic and they are indeed runes. Um, and able to find anything important or significant about this, he turns to look at you and says, "What did you find over there? Anything useful?" He palms it, puts it in his pack. Inside, you see very easily what seems to be a pound or two worth of gold pieces. You count just by weight about 64 gold pieces. Um, Sheldon, not Sheldon, Dorian cracks a pretty big smile and he says, "Ah, loot." Um, you do toss the bag of gold and jingling in the air. It's quite heavy, with like a shoot. You see Dorian catches it in midair, puts it on his puts it in his pack, and says, "Well, let's bugger off then. This statue is giving me the creeps." I think you read this, but without knowledge of Draconic and how to read it. It seems that uh it doesn't seem to be like a warning or anything. It's all around this square tile, so it seems to be some kind of either prayer inscription or some kind of command word that might activate the dragon. Um, I think as you're looking it over, Broma agrees with Dorian and says, "Yes, this is giving me bad feelings. What if you stay there too long and the statue breathes fire on you? Hmm? That would not be a good outcome."
And this is wise indeed. We would not wish to breathe fire upon us, Broma. Uh, I do not know that this is a trap. I do not speak Draconic nor read it, but I do read Dwarven runes, and well, if the two are anything alike, this does not seem like a warning to me. On the other hand, I do not wish to risk it when we are nearly face to face with such a terrible threat, so let us press on.
Broma says, "Wise, let us." And you see her go to the north uh, exit of this room, which leads into another room, as you imagine. Um, she says, "Let us go further. Belak awaits." And when she goes in this room, it's clearly a library of some sort. As she walks in first, she starts kicking books to the side, and you smell the smell of many volumes of paper and leather that have dried over decades, if not centuries, and it hangs in this room. Still, that smell.
Kavan wonders aloud as he's looking around the room. Perhaps, perhaps a library for the people who once dwelled in the Citadel. Unless this, well, Keeper of the Tree is a particularly scholarly sort. It would make sense being directly next to the statue.
Um, in this room, there seems to be many stone bookshelves filling this chamber. Um, on the grounds and on the walls and all across some of the bookshelves that are still standing, you see these torn and burnt pages. Bits of binding and even full scrolls form these piles on the floor. There might be something to look for here. Broma makes her way to the northwest corner and points the door to the north and says, "We should press on. These scrolls and books could be as dangerous as the worshippers and cultists who read and wrote them. I do not trust them."
Ah, but we face a dangerous foe, Broma, and Kavan admits perhaps too many allies for my friends and I to face, and even with your great might at our side, there may be something of use to us here if we merely look for it.
Sure. If you'd like to search, go ahead and give me a perception check. Sheldon may join you here, but I think Dorian and Broma will sit back. Pretty good. Those are good rolls. With two successful rolls, both you and Sheldon start looking around, and they both find something. You find a spell scroll that seems to dictate some sort of spell of fire. Another spell scroll is found by Sheldon, and he picks it up. He reads it and says, "Ah, a spell to create acid. Interesting." Um, and you pick those up. I think this is an Arcana check to know what they are. You are unable to determine what your scroll does besides creating fire. Sheldon is unable to determine what his does, uh, except that it does something with acid.
Kavan asks Sheldon as he brings the scroll he's found over, would you perhaps know anything of what this does? By my estimation, it has something to do with fire, but I'm no mage.
Um, I don't believe he necessarily knows. Yeah, and as you are looking around, Dorian kicks into something, and you can see him look at this. What looks like to be a giant tome of long forgotten history. And as he dusts it off, he says, "Oh, great, more draconic." And he flips it open, and well, I think based on your perception and Sheldon's, you both know this book to possibly be of some worth or value. It is heavy, about 2 or 3 pounds, um, but it looks like it could be valuable.
Well, that, my friend, he says to Sheldon, is of value indeed, for that is the forgotten history of this place. Who knows for how long that book has been laying here and what knowledge it may contain. Uh, Perhaps we should bring it back with us to the surface.
Uh, Dorian looks at this piece of junk and he says as much. Hey, this junk worth money? What, like a few copper pieces? Who would buy? Who in their right minds would buy this?
Well, you see, Kavan tries to explain in a way that does not sound in any way demeaning. Uh, Draconic, as I know it, is often the language in which many mages write their spells of power. So it could be a history book of this place, or it might even be the spell tome of a mage who once lived here. We've no way of knowing, but it is ancient, and therefore it is valuable.
Dorian hears the words ancient and spell tome, and he kind of gets these kind of buttery fingers as he kind of wants to offload it. He says, "Why? Hey, you didn't tell me this was no magic tome. You have it. I'm not holding this on my person."
Kavan is clearly amused, and he takes the tome that is all but forced into his hands, and while he has it, he looks through it just to see if there's anything he might be able to read somewhere in there as he leafs through it.
See, I think at this point you'd recognize the sigil of the runic sigil of a Chardalon, and on it, you do see that not necessarily a Chardalon is there, but you do see the draconic word for dragon, which is easy enough to decipher. All across it, it seems to be some kind of history tome about dragons in particular. And when you're able to dust most of the dust off, you suddenly see these images that are kind of like of swirling elements, all kind of intricately gilding, or at least kind of encompassing the text within this book and its many, many, many tables of contents and passages and chapters. Um, yeah, this looks like a tome of draconic lore, and to the right person, you're certain it would be valuable.
Kavan nods his head once as he traces his fingertip along the course of the runes on each page he examines. I do not read this language, he says, but I do know the word, this word, and he points out the rune, dragon. And this, and he points out the rune for a Chardalon, is the dragon of the city, I believe. Um, I do not think this is a spell book, but rather a book of history. And to someone who is a scholar of ancient things, much less a scholar of dragons, which is uh, quite rare subject to find any lore on in the surface, well, this would be very valuable.
You see Dorian shake his head and say, "No, I'm sure it's valuable. I'm just not holding it myself. Doesn't seem like a safe thing to do."
And yet you ask the shortest among us to carry it very well. And uh, Kavan actually flashes his teeth a little bit in a smile at this time, and he uh, takes the tome over his shoulder and tucks it into his pack. It's not necessarily the most convenient thing for him to be carrying around, but he'd rather that than have uh, Sheldon at all, or rather Dorian at all, shaken up.
Um, you do so, and at that, Broma guides you guys to the next door. This door is not locked either, and when she pushes it open, it shows a hallway leading into a staircase that leads down below, I believe, what is the arboretum or grave the room that you were in earlier, the purple room. You see Dorian and Sheldon make their way in. Sheldon shines his light on the staircase, looks down, and says, "Hey, this passage, is it safe?" Broma looks to him as if scoffs at the idea, and she says, "Of course it is safe. Just be careful."
And Kavan furrows his brow slightly, hearing, of course it's safe, and then followed by, just be careful. These being slightly contradictory statements. But he asks her, uh, is this passage to the underground, or is the tree in an open area?
Broma describes to you, and I'll do this out of character because it's just easier and helpful for my voice if I'm going to keep this up. She describes to you essentially with a crudely drawn map that you must take this passage below, which will take you to the east. The east will lead you to a hallway that turns around and doubles back towards the direction that you came from, or at least you're going south to north. This one is going to head north to south, but it is going to take you to the grove proper. Currently, on the map, you see that you are still within the basement of the citadel, but beyond that, in a large open area, on the map is where the grove is shown to be. And the grove itself seems to be in an area that has collapsed long ago. It has no remnants uh, of the citadel itself. So this might be just a giant cave opening that you're about to walk into after you leave this area.
Well, your ideal place to grow a great tree, Kavan observes. Um, he seems a bit conflicted on this point, and he says, most of this citadel, for better or worse, still stands. I wonder why it is that this place alone has fallen to such ruin. But as he's wondering this, he's still moving forward along with Broma, um, apparently resolved to continue on into the depths.
Um, you see Broma agree with that statement as she says, "Yes, let us continue." She walks down the staircase and, well, does not trip, so it seems to be safe. If the rest of you follow suit, I will put you at where it takes you. These damp and crumbled steps descend sharply, and then as they ramp back up, they go off to the east. And suddenly you can see in these hallways that the fungus growing here seems to be a little bit brighter, and it seems to be a little bit bluer and redder, forming this mix of colors that are almost kind of confusing to the senses.
And Kavan observes as he's walking along In my training, I've learned much of plants, and of course, when I lived in the Underdark, my people used fungi like this to light their way, but this is very strange. The closer we get, the brighter they glow, the stranger they become. Uh, we maybe need to be wary of the very hall around us.
As you say that, and as the party ascends the steps, indeed, you smell something in the air that you did not detect earlier. A different type, a different strain of fungus, perhaps. And suddenly your vision begins to almost glow with dark vision, where once was dim light. You instead see these kind of vibrant colors, kind of pulse in and out, um, with like a cadence too, a cadence that seems to almost represent that of a heartbeat, almost like doof, 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 doof. Brahma will continue to lead you down this hallway and to the end of where it goes. You encounter no resistance when you see the other side. This hallway goes down for easily 100 feet, and as you walk through it, um, each of you, I think, are treated to the vision of this pulsating light. Broma comments and says, "Strange. This fungus is different." Dorian probably says something like, "Oh, is 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 these colors, are they natural?"
Oh, they're nothing like I saw when I lived in the Underdark. I know not what they are. Broma, have you not been here before?
Broma responds, and you see her nod and say, "Yes, I've once or twice, but this is new. We get our orders from the room here." And she points to this door here. And she says, "And this here next to us is his study. I caution you to open or enter either door, as I'm sure we'll encounter something." And as Dorian makes his way further down, uh, checking if the doors are locked, he jimmies them a little bit, and you can hear the knob kind of make no purchase in its slot. He discovers both of them are locked. He replies, or he responds when he discovers this and says, "Both of these are locked."
And Kavan inquires, "Do you have no lockpicks left?"
Dorian says, "Of course I have some left. Yeah, let me just fish them out." And the
I had only the utmost faith in my great rogue companion, of course.
and as he looks to both of the doors, he says, "Oh, I'm not quite a rogue. Well, not what you call one. A knave, maybe. But no, I gave up that a long time ago." Um, and he looks to the party to ask which one he should try to unlock first. Broma, sensing his decision making, says, "Hmm, the most direct approach are probably best. I say, yes, the south one. The south one."
Well, a moment, and Kavan interrupts. You said this one, and he steps toward the door. Was his study?
"Yes, but he only keeps his files and whatever else he has there."
But we might learn something more about him or the tree if we were to look through his books, his recordings. Perhaps something useful in the battle.
Sheldon respond to that too with agreeing. And you hear him say, "Yes, there might be something we can find here. Something to help tell us more about why Belak is who he is and how he does what he does."
Well, then we are left with the dilemma: can the lock be opened?
Um, Dorian, as if sensing a challenge, says, "Of course it can be open. All locks can be open. If not by dexterity, then by brute force." He goes up to the door and attempts to lockpick it. Not quite enough, as he spends about 10 minutes here fumbling around with the lock, getting his tumblers all screwed up. Um, After about 6 or 7, he throws his tools down to the ground and says, "It's impossible."
Oh, have patience, my friend. No doubt he secured this room very well, and as you yourself said, you did set this aside long ago. But as you also said, and he looks down the hall toward Broma, where dexterity fails, brute force may work.
Broma gives you this skeptical look as she comes up to the door. And as Dorian is picking up his tools for a second try, you can see her with her scythe just say, "Move aside." And then Dorian does so, picking up his tools and skedaddling. The bugbear stands the glaive on the far side, on the west side of the wall, kind of wraps her vambraces a little bit tighter, puts both of her arms up, and takes to this door. Just starts slamming into it like a ka-boom, ka-boom. And she continues to do this, making just concussive blows, one after another, against this door. Soon, there, soon you can see the door just going, boom, 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 and dust and fungus spores start kind of falling from the ceiling. Although she is unable to break this door open. Finally, she takes up her glaive, this time trying to hit the door right in its center. Again, making no purchase. As concussive hits land one after another, she finally is able to deal some damage to this door. And as the door kind of bends and caves in with a goo, the final hit makes a and with a lot of sound, a lot of noise, you make your way into Belak's study, where you see that there is a table along with many shelves.
And throughout Broma's attempts, Kavan repeatedly starts to raise his hand as if to tell her to back down, that enough is enough, but he never quite gets his words in before she's attacking the door once again. And he congratulates her with an approving nod of his head, and he says, if half the people in the world had your determination, much more would get done. And he walks around them and has a look into the study.
To that, Broma says, as if in agreement. You walk into the study, and immediately you can see these rough wooden shelves are filled with scattered tomes and scrolls. They line both the north and east walls. Um, a rough hewn desk stands in the center of the chamber, and there seems to be a particularly bright fungus on the ceiling that provides the ability to read comfortably in this light. Um, Off in the far corners of this room are piles of small dirt and branches and trees, uh, leavings of a druid, no doubt.
Kavan looks about for a moment as he can't help but observe he's quite fond of his plants. Not even a simple candle. And as he walks into the room, he's looking about, this being a study, to see if there are any, well, perhaps on the table, any scrolls or open books, anything that he can actually read.
Sure. Go ahead and give me a perception check as you guys start to comb over this room. I think even Brahma joins you after her investment into this endeavor. Um, as she picks splinters out of her hand, she starts thumbing through some of these tomes, trying to figure out if there's anything useful here, anything that could be utilized.
And I'll add to that. Uh, he'll reluctantly try out the little effect of the ring just once for now, and he takes a sniff of the air around the table to see if he can tell whether anything carries a more recent scent, something more recently touched.
I think the most recent thing you find is a tome that seems to store a bunch of figures in these really long charts and columns. On it, it seems to be a store of seasonal records of growth. And it seems Belak has consulted this many, many times throughout the years, as well as the recent past. In it, you see these numbers that record growth, precipitation, harvests, and similar notes for the surrounding lands of Oakhurst. And it seems to go back dozens of years.
And Kavan is at least able to make some sense of this writing, unlike with the draconic statue. And it seems to conflict with his understanding of Belak. This is a record of how plants are growing in the Oakhurst area. He explains to his companions. Nothing particularly malevolent about it. Have have the rest of you found anything?
While you're looking at that, Dorian manages to pick out once again um, some sort of giant tome, almost tripping on it. As he picks it up, he looks it over and he sees that it seems to be a tome just as equally heavy, except this time he can actually read it. And he reads the title and it says, Cycles of Life and Death by George Steen Brokemeister. Huh, interesting. You think this will fancy, well, a couple gold pieces?
Oh, I should imagine anything in here of that size would likely fetch more than a few coins, but um, here, let me see it. I'm interested to see what it concerns.
Um, you start reading it and penning through it. It looks like it seems to be a druidic tome on the theories of the life and death cycle. Um, in it are pages kind of worn and read many times. There are also some pages that are torn out, clearly. Nothing that would suggest some kind of intent or anything. It just seems like this is a long and well used book. Um, but it is of good make and of good penmanship. Easily worth, you know, easily worth something to a collector.
Well, this appears to be a druidic tome. I, of course, know many druids, but I do not read their language. I should think that this would indeed be of value to a sage, a local scholar to the village, anything of that nature, or we certainly someone in Waterdeep if we were to return. Or we might try and find a local druid to give it to.
Um, as you mentioned this, I think the other discovery in this room, Sheldon finds um, a cubbyhole in a desk of this roughly hewn wood. He finds that there seems to be indeed two or three pouches full of jingling coins. And as he brings them up, he sets one down and it makes this thud, easily about 5 pounds worth of cold coins. And another one makes a thud with like a clattering of maybe a handful of gems. At that, Dorian immediately, eyes wide, says, "Sheldon, I know you saw it, but we're splitting this, right?"
Oh, no need to fight. You two just split it between yourselves, and I will be fine off the land as I always am. And he tries to avoid any sort of squabble between them while they're in the depths of evil. And
You you see Dorian immediately go for the piles of coins, kind of divvy it up, and put it in his pack, and you can hear him kind of like spring up and down in his boots as if testing the extra added weight and seeing if it will affect him very much. Seeing that it doesn't, he turns to the door to the south and says, "It is the direction of Belak, right?" And Broma nods without saying much. Her attention seems to be on a book that is also in Draconic. And as she kind of dusts it off, she hands it over to you and says, "Look at this. What? What? I can't read it. Mm, something dragon. Yeah."
well, yes, there is the rune for a dragon, and he takes great care with these tomes because, well, one never knows what might happen when you open a book in a druid's library. But he does open it nevertheless to see what he might find.
You open up to the first page, and on it, it seems to have a bunch of different sigils on it. Things you can glean from this are you see a lamp, you see a fire symbol, you see also swirls of magic, or at least what the book is trying to uh, evoke as magic, um, kind of swirling around the first page in inset, and that seems to be the title, which you can't read. It is as it is in Draconic.
Reminds me of a tale when I was younger, Kavan says. My my matriarch rarely told us tales, but she did glorify that she once had a lamp which summoned forth a great creature of fire to do her bidding and gave her whatever she wished. It's just a random thought which surfaces to his mind, and not an altogether pleasant one. So he doesn't go into further depth, but he adds, "May as well bring it with us. This too would be of worth. This entire library would be of worth, but we cannot carry it all with us."
You see Broma put her hands on the book and say, I wish for Belak's death." And expecting something, she kind of looks blankly in the air.
Uh, no, Broma. That is to say, my matriarch had a lamp which held some manner of creature that granted her wishes. Uh, the book merely is a reminder.
Um, At that, Brahma says, "So it doesn't work."
Well, the book, no. The lamp, only my matriarch could tell you, and with any luck, I will never see her again in all my, hopefully, many years.
And as you say this, Brahma says, "What is wrong with your matriarch? Is she use many lamps that do not work?"
And that's probably a first for Dorian and Sheldon. Kavan actually laughs. He has a sense of humor, and um, he says, "No, well, perhaps she has, but that one, as far as she ever said, did work." What is wrong with my matriarch, like most drow matriarchs, is that they're quite cruel, even by the standards of a great bugbear warrior such as yourself. They wield great magic, control many strange things, and they are quite disliking of people such as myself.
Brahma nods as if she understands and says, "Yes, it is a tough world out there. Sometimes I wonder if I should be doing the things I do, but then I think there are only so few of me. I must do what I do."
Well, imagine it this way, Broma, Kavan says as he starts to wander toward the southern door. Uh, when drow warriors, such as myself, I might be considered, uh, is of certain degree of skill, he is put to test before the goddess worshipped by the matriarchs. And should he fail that test, he is transformed into a monstrosity, a half dark elf, half spider, and then outcast into the Underdark. And this is the manner of thing my matriarchs do, the manner of thing which, though I should have accepted it, and though I should in fact have embraced it, it repulsed me, and it drove me into the light, even though I know it would do me harm.
Um, Brahma takes a second to consider the implications and says, "Hmm, terrifying, turning you into a giant spider. Your matriarch is not one to tread lightly. She seems, well, like you said, cruel."
And that is the way of drow society. The, the matriarchs rule over everything, and over the matriarchs rules their goddess, and, well, their goddess is even more terrible still. I thought I would never find a new home once I left behind the Underdark, but I find that the surface world, even though its people are often hateful toward me merely for my skin, well, uh, it is nevertheless a very welcoming place with its own charms. My two great companions not being least among them.
At that, Dorian and Sheldon speak up. They say, I think Sheldon speaks up and says, "Yes, this is known about the Drow. Everything I've heard about them has even colored my own beliefs. I must ask you, Kavan, since you are here in a way, do you ever seek to return to your home? Maybe to set things right, either with the ones you would have called family or your own blood? Or do you seek really new horizon?"
Well, I suppose Kavan begins thinking on this as if he really never had before. He says, I suppose if it were within my power, I would certainly seek to bring my people to a more merciful way of life, a way that knows kindness, but it simply is not their way. And since I have come to the surface and into the service of Lady Selune, I suppose I have found my horizon, as you call it. I don't believe I would go back, even given the choice.
Um, in response to that, you see Dorian uh, look at you as he's, you know, still busy dividing coins into his pouches, and he says, "Hmm, who needs them, right? When you've got friends like these." And as he's motioning to his tiny stash of gold, he says, when you've got friends like these, well, who needs to go back to family? Hmm. Look at me. I left mine and I'm doing fine."
Kavan, well, once again, he chuckles and he says, yes, friends like these, one of whom is nobly trying to regain his faith, and the other who talked me into the small task of investigating a tree, and, well, it seems to have become something more than that.
Indeed, this tree, if everything is correct. And look, I wouldn't call myself the smartest here. And you see Dorian finish up his coin distributing as he takes out he takes out a crowbar. You see, he goes to this door and he says, "But I am definitely the cleverest." And he begins to make way at this door with a crowbar this time instead of a lockpick. Um, as he goes into that endeavor, though, you hear the sound of claws against wood to the south. And it almost sounds like, if you didn't know better, that there were people eavesdropping on you from the south.
And Kvan is a little alarmed by this, such that he actually reaches up as much as he can to try and put his hand on Dorian's shoulder to try and stop him. And once again, he relies upon the ring, and he just takes a whiff of the air near the door to try and see if he can pick out anything on the other side. He's finding this
Sure.
new sense of smell oddly useful.
Go ahead and give me a perception check. And that is going to be a +2 as you have the ring's effects. That is not quite enough. I think you smell the musk of bodies to the south. You can't tell who they are or what they are, but you smell something. And it smells just as it sounds, that there are people to the south clawing and maybe eavesdropping on you. Their musk kind of pervading the door's barriers a slight bit.
Well, Kavan doesn't quite know what to make of this, and this time around, the ring unfortunately doesn't save him as much as it did the last. He draws his offhanded scimitar and gestures toward the door in a manner that indicates a warning, not necessarily an alarm, but caution. And then he nods again to Dorian.
Um, you do so, and Sheldon also takes his spot next to this door. Sensing that there is a fight occurring or about to occur, Broma raises her scythe and says, "Are there heads that need smashing? Because I'm particularly good at smashing heads."
Well, there are people, I believe, he says, sounding rather uncertain, but whether they need smashing, I do not know. They
You
seem.
see Brahma take immediately to the door and begins just pounding it, not to break it, but as if to give a knock to the people on the other side. When she hits it with like a do do do, you can hear her say out in Goblin a phrase that might. I don't know if anyone here speaks Goblin.
Kavan does not.
Dorian understands,
He does speak
and
Undercommon.
not quite exactly the same thing. Although I think Goblin is more similar to Draconic, I believe.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, I think so.
but you can hear her yell out uh, some kind of either command or uh, hail to the other side. And when she does, you can hear on the other side reply in Goblin in like a very meek voice, and you can hear it say, and you hear you see Broma hear the callback, and when she does, she begins to go for the knob, and she turns around to tell you guys what's been going on, and she says, "They are goblins on the other side. I've told them to stand down. That we are here to fight Belak, and that if they are not with us, then I will beat their tiny skulls in."
Persuasive, Kavan compliments her, and what do they say in return, if anything?
Uh, and she says, they say in your words, what is the word? And Dorian pipes up and says, "Oh, you mean okay? They said okay." And Broma says, "Yes, yes, they accepted my terms."
And what direct terms they were, Kavan says with a bright smile, and then he nods to go ahead, open the door.
The door is unfortunately locked, so it does take some time for it to be opened. Um, the goblins on the other side can be heard scrabbling with their claws against this door. Looks like it sounds like they're fumbling, and as they do, uh, I think Dorian and Sheldon kind of relax a little bit when the door is finally opened. Kind of opens with a crack at first, with like, and then the giant bugbear in front of you utters in her guttural tongue, um, and at that the goblins seem to stand down and put away their weapons. One of them had a scimitar, another had a short bow drawn, uh, and now they seem to stand at the ready, as if there was some kind of chain of command here, and that Broma is at the top of, or at least to them.
Are these people your subordinates, Broma? Do you know them?
And she replies in common and says, you see her nod her head and say, "Yes, I I trained them myself."
Ah, well, then they are dutiful enough, loyal enough, certainly, it seems. And what lies ahead of us that they're guarding?
Um, and as she moves into the room, she points to I would say to south, to the very back of the cavern that is just barely dimly lit in this kind of purplish blue glow. And I think you can see it yourself if you move into the room. You see a tree, a massive tree that stretches almost to the cavern ceiling, um, about 60 or 70 feet up. From there, you can tell that that is where the tree resides, beneath this phosphorescent glow, and among some of the ruins too that you've noticed that have accumulated in this area.
I'm going to assume I can see the tree. The dynamic lighting is sort of in the way.
Yep.
Um, well, Kavan is well. He seems to arrive at what looks like a crumbled wall, and um, just as he crosses the threshold of the rubble, he notices the very distinct change that there are trees in this place, in what looks like more of a cavern, really, than the very well structured citadel he had been traveling through. And he says over his shoulder to his companions, be on your guard. I do believe that we walk Belak's home ground. And out come his scimitars.
Um, you say that and you mention it to the crew, and they are, uh, well, right there next at your side with weapons drawn. With the goblins taking their positions there, Broma uh, starts to charge into the forest. When she does, you see that she is encountering multiple of these twig blights, and she engages in well, a stance, which says, "Come here." As she engages these blights, she yells out to you in front and says, "Let me take care of these blights. Go, find Belak, and do what you will to him."
Kavan is, of course, not at first willing to leave Broma behind to fight by herself, but thinking back to how things were earlier, he saw her cut down one of these twig blights in one swoop of her scythe. So, with that memory in mind, he reluctantly accepts the offer and attempts to creep by while they are engaging her. So he'll move a bit to the southwest here and
Sure.
see what happens.
Um, she engages in fight with them, and the melee is mostly on her side. Um, this is out of character, not a combat I want to have a bugbear necessarily fight, uh, or have to role play out, or have to do the stats out. I'm kind of using this as a excuse to have her fight some of the trash mobs here, so to speak.
Sure.
Otherwise, this will get long and drawn out. So, as she engages in the so getting back into characters, as she engages in the twig blights, you see her um, cleave some of them in twain, just like she did earlier, bringing the scythe down with her handle, swooping around in deadly arcs. Off in distance, you can hear like thump, thump, thump. And as you make your way to the south, you can see off in a distance that there are indeed figures hanging in the ruins of this broken down building, in the center of which is a giant tree, a tree that seems to grow ever bigger and more ominous as you get closer to it. At this point, Sheldon is whispering his prayers. Dorian checking his crossbow and weapons, and they look to you and they say, "In this dark, dismal place, I wonder, they think they can find salvation? Or do you think they came here because they wanted to seek those like themselves?"
Well, it could be either, my friend, I suppose. But on the other hand, it could be madness. Perhaps They thought they might find some sort of salvation in the tree where they could not among the druids of Oakhurst. And as he's wondering aloud, he steps up alongside Sheldon, and then he stops short because far to the southwest he can see a figure. Uh, looks uh, to the player's eye to be purple or pink, and he stops and lifts a hand to try and get a better grasp of what it is he's looking at.
Um, I think from this distance you see the pale green skin of a woman.
And well, of course, he would start to look over his shoulder to ask Broma, "Is Belak a woman?" But there's no time really to do so given her current situation. So he tells his companions, "Do not strike too swiftly." But I wonder now if Belak is a male's name. Um, there's someone ahead, and it looks to me to be female shape more than male.
As you click closer, you can see your features more up close. But from that distance, what you currently are, I'm not sure if you can tell. You would need to move closer to engage them.
And he does move closer bit by bit. He's trying to get into a more advantageous position to get a look, but he doesn't want to draw too much attention.
Sure. You are welcome to roll a stealth check to hide your approach. A 20 will do it. As your compatriots stand back, you're able to get a good glimpse of the crew here. I believe you are able to hide underneath a tree or behind a wall and see that there are indeed many people here. One person in the front looks like a fighter, and he looks like similar to how the female was described. Pale green skin covers his body. In the middle, you see this bearded man with fur all wrapped up, um, holding a staff. He does not have the same green skin. Instead, he looks like he holds himself with the gusto of some kind of master. Uh, the full description of this area, though, is the walls are about 60 feet high, less than half the height of the ceiling, cavern ceiling is the tree proper. You can see several varieties of plants growing around the perimeter, as well as beneath the tree. Um, Next to those bits of vegetation grow these suspicious looking plants that look like saplings. Um, Beneath the fungal light, though, this evil tree, its blackened and twisted limbs reach ever upward, like some kind of skeletal hand clawing its way out of the earth. Um, Before it, you see the heavily armored young male closest to you with a shield and a sword, a blonde young woman with pale green skin and a robe fit for a noble, and a middle aged, bearded man who continues looking around um, with this presence, armed with a staff and a sickle.
And the woman in particular catches Kavan's attention. He thinks of, for a moment, back to what he saw and learned in the laboratory. And then he remembers people turning green with skin like bark. And he wonders, is this a success among the many failures? And he sees then the figure with the staff, more so the one with the sickle. And that, in his mind, resembles a druid. And so he motions to his companions as carefully as he can from behind the tree, and with pointing first to his eyes, he makes a gesture ahead of himself, and he hopes from where they are, perhaps they'll be able to peek around the corner and see the tree, and that this will be indication enough that they have found what they were looking for.
They both see your gestures and they see the tree as well. As they motion to you and speak in quite hushed tones, you can hear, you see Sheldon take out his book as if preparing spells. Um, you hear him say, "Aye, this is that tree. It must be. What do we do now? Do we fight him, or perhaps convince him to let go of his ways?"
I do not know that we can convince him at this point. He is so far gone, he is attempting to make monstrosities of the dead. This is the very antithesis of what a druid is. Druids allow the dead to die so that they may give rise to new life. But it could be tried. I am but one among three. I welcome your decisions as much as my own.
Sheldon looks at you, potentially thinking about it, and you see him really struggle with the idea that the tree must be evil, and so he says, "This tree could have use for us if it indeed heals people, like it says in the legends. Perhaps this tree could come to benefit the people of Oakhurst, especially after the presence of Belak is removed. If we destroy the tree, we may put that all to forfeit. But I defer to you. Eldeth wants peace, but Selune, she may desire justice."
And Kavan accepts Sheldon's wisdom with a nod of his head, but wishing to be fair on all accounts, he looks then to Dorian to see how he feels about the matter.
Dorian does not seem one way or another, swayed, sorry, one way or another. Um, and I guess he thinks about it for a second. Holding the alchemist fire in his hand, he says, "I've burned a lot of bridges on my way here to where I am now. Sheldon, he keeps me in one piece, but he's also there to make sure I don't forget where I came from. You see, we're both from the Sword Coast. He's just been living here longer. And in my profession, well, you know what they say. The longer you live, the more dangerous you are. If we're going to approach this for best chances of survival, we have to do what we must. If that means burning down a tree, then it means we burn down a tree."
A funny quote for you to make. Kavan recites from his own memory, "Fear the man who lives to be old in professions where men die young." And he recalls this from no doubt someone he heard, or rather from someone who took part in his training.
And he He nods and he says, "Then we're in agreement. Then, if we need to destroy that tree, we will."
How well, both of you each have a flask of the alchemist's fire, and no doubt you could lob it the distance if you needed to, so for the moment, stay there, and I will see how maddened this druid is. If Eldath is with us, perhaps there's a way to peace, but if that fails, uh, do not wait for whatever may befall me. Throw those files at the tree.
They both agree, and they take their positions.
And with that done, Kavan takes a step forward, actually a little bit to the southwest as well, to there, so that he can more directly address the man holding the staff. And he speaks in common. Am I in the presence of Belak the druid?
Um, as you walk into the clearing, Sir Bradford announces himself, and he says, "I am Sir Bradford, defender of the Gulthias tree. What business do you have here? What business do you and your ilk have with a tree so majestic?" Um, and that is coming from this gentleman right here. As you look at him, he seems to be not quite himself. And what I mean by that is he seems to be, well, um, struggling with saying things in a way that fits someone of his stature and tone. He seems almost being coerced at what he's currently doing. And as he looks over uh, to his left, you hear the man speak. And he does. Belek replies, and he says, "You're speaking to the man himself. Belak is my name. And what can I do for you, Dark Elf? Have you come to pray and give yourself to the tree?"
I have come for understanding, Belak. And as he says this, he gestures over his shoulder behind himself. I've heard many things about fruit coming to the surface, fruit so valued that people are giving away all the gold they might have saved in their lives, perhaps their fathers' lives, simply for one piece. And it was that fruit alone which has drawn me so far into this darkness through so many things, through the results of your experiments, and through what I might say, and he remembers the book, defies the cycle of life and death.
"Ah, so you're a fanatic then. You've come seeking answers yourself of what life and death consumes us mortals to no end. Well, then I have an answer for you." And Belek walks back a step and touches the tree. And his eyes glow a bit green, as they do. And for the first time, you hear Sharwin Hookerly speak up as she says, introducing herself, and says, "I am Sharwin Hookerly, and I am the defender of this tree, no matter what the people of Oakhurst will say. This man, Belak, is a god amongst us, able to weave life and death with his own fingers and his own abilities. Why do you not prostrate yourself in front of this man?
He
She
is
issues a challenge to you.
he is a druid, Kavan replies, and at one time, and he recalls the book upon the table, he was a druid who cared not for this tree, but for the many plants of Oakhurst. He cared for the region. And so I come before him not in worship, but rather in question as to why he has abandoned his duty to the land.
Um, and at that, as if triggered off the word abandoned, Belak flies into an angry spat, and he says, "Abandoned? Abandoned the mortal realm? Is that what you call this? This creation of mine? A vampire had its heart staked and died upon these grounds. A tree grew out of it, and I, its only tender, have come from a distance long, 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 long away. I, who was outcast from my own circle, have brought renewed meaning and purpose to this tree. This tree represents more than just life and death. It represents a way to break the cycle, a way to make gods of all of us. If you cannot see that, then you have no business living."
I wonder, he says to Belak, if your companions agree with you so much. Sharwin Hookerly. And he looks to the woman as he reaches into his pouch, still holding his scimitar, but using just two fingers to do so. He pinches the signet ring he found earlier among the goblin's treasures, and he shows it to her. We came in search of you. It was your family that wished you to be found. And I am of the belief that you did not come here to worship this tree or this man or anything of the nature. Perhaps you sought to defend Oakhurst from whatever whatever sort of enchantment this fruit has put over them. Are you certain that what you are now is what you sought to be?
Um, Through glassy eyes, Sharon looks at you and looks at the ring in your hand, and something cracks in her visage. The barky skin of her cheek seems to glow a little bit red, and you see almost what looks like sap kind of coming out of the edge of her eye. And she says, "Taugen's ring. Is that Taugen's ring?" And she seems to be holding in a little bit of pain through her visage, and she speaks up and says, "That's he died getting us here. We followed Belak here, and he has made everything better. Taugen, Taugen, why did you have to die?
Did you
Mother never liked you, but we could have been brothers and sisters." Um, at that, Sir Bradford, as if being commanded by some external force, raises his sword at you and says, "You bring death and pain to us."
I have brought you no death. Her pain is not the result of any pain I have inflicted. She is remembering who she truly is. And she is remembering that they came here in search of Belak, but not to do what she's doing now, and not to become what she has become. She's remembering herself, as perhaps you will.
Um, and at that, as if commanded to not speak, Sharwin Hookerly and Sir Bradford stand motionless, and Belak, you can see is twisting his wrist as if summoning some kind of magic from the tree. And as he steps forward, he says, "You think these people have any lives worth returning to? That is not the truth, and let me explain. Oakhurst. What do you know of Oakhurst? A small, sleepy town in the north, yes, but many decades ago, it was a village, a town even, a small little hamlet of a few key families." And he motions to Sharwin Hookerly, and he continues. "The winters were harsh here. You know that. Looking over my notes, you sneak thief. It has been difficult for many of the people and nobles there. But what did they do when the winters came? And they didn't stop. When the air turned bright white with snow, and every belly in Oakhurst was hungering for the next meal. What do you suppose happened to a family of cannibals?"
I know not what was, he says. I only know what is. And in the present, she. She does have something to return to. Were that not the case, I would not be in these dark depths as we speak. Her family is looking for her. They wish her return. And they, for one, are offering their gold not for your fruit, but for their safety.
Safety, you say? I've seen the posts the goblins tell me. 125 gold for the ring. Double if the person comes along with the ring. So I ask you this. Is a ring worth a human life? In the far north, where a life only meant a meal for their ancestors, the
You,
Hookley family made themselves fat off of lives, and they will continue to do so.
and my matron, and her matron, and her matron before her made themselves virtual empresses of the Underdark on the backs of men and women who were not born to such great fortune. I do not hold myself responsible for their crimes any more than I would hold her family responsible for her ancestors. You seem obsessed with the past. You seem obsessed with life and death in this case. What pains you? What is it that burdens you?
And at this, Belak, his eyes twitch on like the very corner, and he says, "The almanac, the almanac reads destruction. The winters will not stop. One of these days, the roots of every tree in the north will turn brittle and cold. She has shown me, the harbinger of doom. She has shown me the destruction
that will be wreaked upon this land. And then, even the brightest of us,
as he motions to Hook, Sharwin, and Sir Bradford.
even to them, without my guidance, they will set upon each other like animals. I am obsessed with survival. You know this, and I see this in you.
I do indeed see your obsession with survival, Kavan admits, and I also know, being a man of nature first and foremost, that it is unbecoming of a druid. One day, all druids return to the soil, and they do so with reverence, for they know that their remains give rise to new life. As to the people of Oakhurst, I do not judge those who I do not know, and I certainly do not condemn them for the actions of their ancestors.
With that, Belak says,
You think that life is worth saving. No. No. Life is worth capturing. Because when we are all dead, it will mock us. My dreams, I have seen it. They know not what they do. They are unable to be stewards of their own fate. So, it has come to this then. Shall we settle our differences?
I've wished to settle differences with you, Belak, only if you will not turn away from the tree and return to your true path as a steward of the land. If there is some great winter to befall Oakhurst and the Sword Coast, then a druid would not be an end to life. You would be a sustainer of life, and you would not need this tree to succeed in that. Surely you must see that you have let your fear grip you for too long. You have let it drive you to do things that in your life, even after you were expelled from your circle, surely these things were not within your spirit to do.
Belak now kind of chuckles a little bit as if sensing something off with your statement. Belak says,
My circle never needed me, and I will never need them. The life that I see in this world is not fit to live. Sharwin, Sir Bradford, do what you must. We can take him on. We've taken them all on.
and he raises his hand and prepares to cast spells.
And Kavan immediately, he lifts a hand as well, turning a scimitar upside down so that he has the benefit of his fingers, and he too begins to cast a spell. So it seems to be a matter of a race against time as to who completes their casting first.
Sure. For that, we need initiative.
I'm remembering tonight to target my token.
All right. This is a fine spread of stats. Dorian is able to act first as he sees your signal. He makes his way into the clearing. Makes a little bit more. There we go. And he's able to target the tree with the alchemist's fire. He jumps in and throws, I believe, the same bonus as a light crossbow at the tree. And the tree has an AC. I need to see what it is. And he hits it. Alchemist's fire splashes across the tree, casting the darkened branches into this new orange glow. It catches fire, and immediately you can hear Belak yell out, "No! No!" And it is his turn. Did you have something to say?
I was just going to say, Kavan raises his voice above the druid and he says, if there is anything vampires hate so much as the stake, it is the flame. It is over, Belak. Return to the surface with me and find your way again. You are free of this tree.
Belak seems just completely consumed by fury and rage as this tree is now, lighting on fire. Let's see if I can find a fire and set it on the tree. Yeah, there we go. And that is actually going to be a way for me to manage its health points too.
Ooh, it has hit points. That can't be good.
Dorian's turn is over. And as you exchange words, Belak begins to cast a spell. He uses his wand and casts Entangle. The 20-foot square will be centered on here. Let's actually go ahead and make that green. Roots and vines suddenly sprout from beneath you. As they come up to the ground, they start capturing your legs and feet. Go ahead and give me a strength saving throw. And Dorian will give one as well. Both of you managed to beat his spell DC. As they kind of clasp onto your boots, you are able to kick them off, and vines and leaves go flying at your foot level. With that, Belak moves back and towards the tree. Go ahead, Kavan. It is your turn.
Kavan decides, in retrospect, after all that's happened, that Belak is a lost cause. He seems to be lost within the tree, even as it is burning. He's moving toward it, and his training as a Gloomstalker teaches him that if there is an opponent that he does not believe he can convince, then striking first is the way of things. And so he, with his scimitars raised, pointing ahead of himself, charges Belak and tries not only to stab him with the scimitars, but to push him back upon the tree.
So are you making a move towards Belak?
Yes, it's like a direct charge with my scimitars pointed straight forward. If only to just stab him, but if possible, using my momentum to push him back onto the burning tree.
Gotcha. And do you ignore difficult terrain?
Let me actually confirm that for you.
I think it might be a ranger thing.
Yes, I actually do. Unearthed Arcana one does anyway.
I believe, yeah. Yeah, let's call it that. You were able to make it to Belak immediately over this kind of grasp of vines.
And as he arrives, and per usual, moving oddly swift when combat first opens, he strikes his blows, and in fact, he's uh, supernaturally almost swift enough to strike three of them in case the first two do not do the job of putting him to the flame of the tree.
Gotcha. Go ahead and roll attacks.
And sorry, I just wanted to confirm something. Okay, I get one additional attack. If the attack hits, he takes an extra 1d8 damage. I was just confirming that. I was wondering if I got advantage or not.
Are you spending an inspiration, or are you describing the way that you're doing it?
You know what? This is heroic moment stuff, so let's spend an inspiration.
I would say this too. If you had inspiration, or if you didn't have it, you definitely have it from the conversation with Belak. As a DM rewarding good role play, that's that's it. There it is.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So go ahead and roll your first attack with advantage.
Okay. Sorry if I'm slow. I'm doing a new system where when I'm looking at stuff, it does not get in the way of our viewers, so they can still see the map and so forth. So I'm a bit slow.
You are good.
And since this gives me an extra attack, would you say I use main or offhand? Because the main hand obviously has a slight advantage.
Yeah, this is a main hand. All three of those attacks hit.
All right.
This is that AC is
Oh, and actually I forgot. 1d8.
extra, correct?
Oh, right, extra, but it's a 1, but there it is.
You end up doing 22 damage to Belak as he, with each successive stroke against his armor, slashes it and pierces it and rends his body. Belak is looking very badly off, and at this point, he's already started bleeding from his wounds. He stumbles back, making this, you'll never kill me. Get him!
And has he given any ground toward the tree in the midst of the charge there?
Yeah, maybe he's like underneath the tree,
Okay.
which is on fire and not yet spreading, but threatens to.
All right. And let's see. That would I don't have any bonus actions to take, so that would be the end of my turn.
At the end of end of your turn, something from the tree jumps and leaps onto the ground. This giant frog, which looked like it was probably some kind of pet or familiar, leaps onto the ground next to you and begins assailing you.
A gigantic type?
A giant frog.
Ah, gotcha.
One of the neat things about this one, I guess.
I was hoping it was a normal frog.
Oh no, not in this case. It makes like the snapping sound as it jumps down next to you with like a its tongue misses your body and hits the ground, uh, trying to gobble up your foot. But after that, it is Sheldon's turn. Sheldon, a little bit further away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sees the tree also from a distance, and is able to throw his fire as well. Not quite as good with the arm. He is going to make it. Oh, a 21 will hit.
Yeah.
+2 with his proficiency and a +1 to strength. He chucks he chucks this alchemist fire directly at the tree, and when it hits, it splashes against another part of the tree, setting that part on fire as well. On her turn, Sharwin sees that her master is in danger, so she is going to cast a spell to do something about it. Um, Out of her hands glow these 3 orbs, and as they fly out, they hit against your side, dealing 11 points of force damage. As you become knocked out, not knocked out, as you get knocked through your armor from these magical force bolts. At that, she moves up to your position and yells out, "Leave him be! He has done nothing to you." And after that, it is Sir Bradford's turn, who looks like he is probably going to charge Dorian with his sword and shield out. He steps forward, avoiding the entangled area, and is going to attack. And attack differently. He makes for Dorian's weapon on his belt, I believe, with a one-handed longsword attack. Oops, I clicked twice. The 12s do not hit. And when they swing, Dorian notices that this is some kind of magical weapon. On his reply is a attack with a short sword. He swings out his short sword, attempting to hit this armored gentleman, and misses. With his 8, he swings it right at the gentleman's torso and rakes against the chainmail he's wearing, missing, obviously. Belak, on his turn, sensing the fire here and sensing the dire situation he's in, calls for his twig blights to rouse. And as they join the fight, they will go after him. He is going to take his turn with his action to actually cast a spell. And that spell is likely a healing spell. Touching his hand to his wounds, he heals himself for 15 points of damage. And he yells out, "You will not live to see the next day." And after he goes, Twiglight rouses, making its way towards you. 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. The twig blights cower underneath this burning tree, and as they do, they're trying to avoid getting caught on fire. And when they attack with disadvantage. 14 and a 12 both miss your AC, I believe, as they start trying to rake at you while also trying to duck and keep low, avoiding the fire that they have a, well, just such an aversion to. And it is your turn. Kavan, you see yourself surrounded.
Kavan is surrounded, but he's utterly convinced that if he can, well, either let the tree be destroyed or kill Belak, whichever happens first, perhaps the other two will be free of whatever ensorcelment has been put upon them. And so he presses his attack without retreating.
All right. The tree at this point is not looking super great. It is burning slowly to the ground. And as it does, you are attacking Belak, it seems.
Yes, and Kavan labors to do this after having been struck by the force bolts earlier. But nevertheless, he says, Lady Selune, be with me now in this time of evil. And he strikes twice with his scimitars, trying once again to push Belak back upon the flames.
Go ahead and give me actually a strength check or athletics check for that second attack. And let's see if you can do that. The first attack hits. You can roll damage for that.
Oh, that was a save, not a strength check. I'm sorry.
I mean, 17 is still pretty good.
I am not a strong fellow.
You do 8 points of slashing damage to Belak. And as you try to shove him over, he's going to have to make a save.
And I'm sorry, did you
He
say?
does not.
Oh yeah, no,
What's that?
I'm sorry. Did you say the second attack hit or no?
It does not. No.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. The second one misses as you try to shove him into the tree. And as you finish your attack, standing on the ground that you are, you can hear Sheldon yell out to you and say, "Help's coming! Help's coming!"
Well, if Lady Selune is listening, I surely hope so, my friend. And Kavan's breath sounds quite labored as he yells that plea not only to his companions, but to the goddess he serves.
1, 2, 3, 4. On its turn, one of the twig blights will again attack with disadvantage as it tries to scrabble underneath the fire here. 14 does not hit. And once again, you are surrounded by an enemy that does not hit you. On his turn, Sheldon casts a spell. And I believe the spell he's going to cast is Guiding Bolt. As he targets the tree, something appears out of the air, and it is bright and it is filled with radiant energy. When it comes down on a tree, it explodes. Branches go flying, and fire erupts in that area. And he deals 16 points of damage to the tree. The tree at this point is breaking and just utterly being ruined. It is sure to fall, if not now, but if in just a few seconds. Burning wood starts falling from the sky and threatens to light these twig blights on fire. In fact, they're going to have to make dexterity saves. They all pass, and the fire misses them. And as the tree becomes less and less cohesive, as more and more branches start breaking off, you can sense behind you, Sharwin is struggling to maintain her composure. And you can hear her say,
Belak, you will not.
on its turn, the giant frog that has been assisting Belak this whole time leaps to attack you again, making a bite attack. Missing